welcome to Tales in the Dark. I know many of you enjoy relaxing with these videos, so I recommend turning down the volume until my voice is barely audible. It'll make the experience even more soothing. Before you close your eyes, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Story 1. I opened the door expecting leftovers, half a carton of eggs, my usual clutter. Instead, everything inside was perfectly arranged. Fruits I'd never bought, jars with faded labels, raw meat wrapped in wax paper. The air smelled cold and sweet, with a chemical edge I couldn't place. I hadn't been grocery shopping in weeks, and something at the back was breathing. I slammed the door shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing breathes inside refrigerators. My mind raced through logical explanations. A malfunctioning fan, the settling of cooling components, my imagination running wild after too many nights alone in this apartment. When I gathered the courage to look again, I opened the door slowly. The breathing sound had stopped, but the foreign food remained, arranged with meticulous precision. Apples stacked in a perfect pyramid, vegetables aligned by color, containers labeled in handwriting I didn't recognize, spidery letters spelling words that seemed almost familiar but weren't quite right. I took photos with my phone, documenting the intrusion. The images came out blurry, as if the contents refused to be captured clearly. I touched an apple, half expecting it to dissolve under my fingers. It felt waxy, unnaturally smooth. I placed it on my counter, deciding to examine it in daylight. Sleep evaded me that night. The hum of the refrigerator, once background noise, now sounded like whispered conversations. I could swear the pitch changed whenever I paid attention to it. Morning brought no clarity. The apple on my counter had vanished. The photos on my phone showed only the empty interior of my refrigerator, the usual barren shelves I'd expected to find last night. I questioned my sanity, wondering if stress had finally fractured my perception of reality. I went about my day, forcing normalcy. Work helped distract me, filling my mind with mundane problems that required logical solutions. By evening, I had almost convinced myself I'd experienced some bizarre waking dream. Until I came home. The scent hit me first, that same sweet chemical smell, stronger now, wafting from the kitchen. I found my refrigerator door slightly ajar, a thin line of light spilling onto the floor. Inside, the collection had grown. New items occupied every inch of space, glass bottles filled with cloudy liquids, containers of food in various stages of preparation, and what appeared to be organ meat arranged on a ceramic plate. This time I documented everything meticulously, writing descriptions in a notebook rather than relying on photography. I sketched the arrangement, noted the strange labels, and recorded the temperature inside, which felt colder than my refrigerator should be capable of producing. I didn't touch anything. Instead, I unplugged the refrigerator entirely. The motor wound down with a groan that sounded almost pained. The light inside died. I sat at my kitchen table, notebook open, watching and waiting. Without the hum of the motor, my apartment felt unnaturally silent. I could hear my own breathing, the rustle of my clothes when I shifted position, the faint creaking of the building settling around me. My neighbors' footsteps passed by my door. I'd never spoken to them beyond brief nods in the hallway. Now I wondered about their refrigerator, what food they kept, whether they'd noticed anything unusual. The silence broke when my phone vibrated against the table. No caller ID. I answered but heard only static interspersed with what might have been words in a language I didn't understand. When I pressed the phone harder against my ear, straining to make sense of the sounds, I realized with growing horror that the static pattern matched the rhythm of breathing I'd heard in my refrigerator. I hung up, hands shaking. The refrigerator remained dark and silent, but now I noticed a thin line of moisture seeping from beneath it, spreading across my kitchen floor. Not water, something thicker, slightly viscous, with a faint pinkish tint. I called my landlord, leaving a message about a potential leak. Then I called a friend who suggested I stay at their place while waiting for repairs. Rational advice. I packed an overnight bag, avoiding looking at the refrigerator as I left. My friend's couch provided sanctuary. Their home functioned normally, lights that stayed at consistent brightness, a refrigerator that contained exactly what they had purchased. I relaxed marginally, allowing myself to believe I'd simply experienced a faulty appliance combined with an overactive imagination. My landlord texted he'd check my apartment tomorrow. I fell asleep feeling almost normal again. I dreamt of opening door after door, each revealing a perfect arrangement of food I had never seen before. Behind the last door, something waited for me, something that had been arranging itself for my arrival. I awoke to my phone chiming with notifications. Photos I didn't remember taking filled my gallery, dozens of images showing the interior of my refrigerator, each slightly different from the last, as if capturing a gradual transformation. The final image showed what appeared to be a narrow tunnel, extending impossibly deep beyond the back wall of the appliance. My friends slept soundly in their bedroom while I sat frozen on their couch, scrolling through evidence of something beyond rational explanation. The timestamp on the photos indicated they had been taken while I slept. I deleted them all, restarted my phone, and tried to convince myself of a technical glitch. The landlord called mid-morning. He had checked my apartment and found nothing wrong with the refrigerator. It was running normally, though he mentioned it seemed unusually full of food for someone staying elsewhere. Had I gone shopping recently? The comment chilled me more than any strange sound or sight. "What kind of food?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "The usual stuff," he answered vaguely. "Looked fancy, though. You must be eating well." I returned to my apartment, driven by a compulsion stronger than fear. The refrigerator hummed contentedly, plugged in again by my landlord. The puddle on the floor had disappeared. No evidence remained of the strange events, no photographs, no notebook sketches which had apparently vanished from where I'd left them. Only the lingering sweet chemical smell suggested I hadn't imagined everything. I approached the refrigerator cautiously. The handle felt cool against my palm, the door opening with gentle resistance. Inside, my usual sparse collection of condiments and takeout containers greeted me. Normal, familiar, mine. Relief flooded through me until I noticed my reflection in the glass shelf. It wavered slightly, the face looking back at me almost but not quite synchronized with my movements. When I tilted my head, my reflection remained still for a fraction of a second too long. I slammed the door shut again and began searching for a new apartment that afternoon. The moving process took weeks. I ate takeout exclusively, never opening the refrigerator again. I purchased a small cooler for essentials, keeping it in my bedroom with the door locked. My sleep became fragmented, interrupted by the distant sound of breathing that seemed to come from within the walls. At night, my phone would light up with texts from unknown numbers, containing only strings of numbers or single words that made no sense in sequence. I changed my number twice. The messages found me anyway. On moving day, the refrigerator was the last item I dealt with. I considered abandoning it, paying for a new one at my next place, but something told me it would follow me regardless. The movers commented on its weight heavier than expected for its size. "What you got in here, bricks?" one asked, laughing. I smiled weakly, watching them struggle with it down the stairs. They loaded it onto their truck, and I followed in my car to the new apartment building. During the drive, I glimpsed the moving truck swerving slightly, as if the weight inside had shifted unexpectedly. The movers installed the refrigerator in my new kitchen, plugged it in, and left. The familiar hum began immediately, without the usual startup delay. I stood before it, gathering courage for one final inspection before deciding whether to keep it or dispose of it permanently. The interior light illuminated as I opened the door. Empty shelves gleamed back at me, clean, new, a fresh start. I sighed with relief and began unpacking my other belongings. Night fell, and I ordered dinner, placing the leftovers in the refrigerator without a second thought. Exhausted from moving, I fell into a dreamless sleep in my new bedroom. I woke to the sensation of being watched. My new apartment creaked with unfamiliar noises, but beneath them ran the steady hum of the refrigerator. A sound I now realized had been absent while I slept, only resuming moments before I awoke. In the kitchen, the refrigerator door stood open, spilling light across the floor. Inside, perfect rows of fruits, vegetables, and containers filled the shelves. Food I hadn't purchased, arrangements I hadn't made, and taped to the inside of the door, a note written in that same spidery handwriting. "We've been waiting for you to notice us." I approached slowly, the cold air washing over my face. Behind the arranged food, the back panel of the refrigerator seemed to recede into darkness, no longer a solid barrier but a threshold. The breathing sound returned, louder now, accompanied by the shuffling of movement from somewhere in that impossible depth. Something was making its way forward. I didn't run, I didn't scream. Instead, I reached for my phone and began documenting everything, driven by a compulsion to record what was happening. This time, the images came through with perfect clarity. As I watched, the arrangement of food began to shift slightly, items sliding fraction by fraction, creating a narrow path toward me. The breathing grew louder, closer. That's when I realized I wasn't just looking at someone else's food. I was looking at someone else's hunger. Story 2, the cycle had finished. The beep echoed through the hallway, but when I opened the dryer door, the blanket inside was soaked, dense, heavy like it had been pulled from a lake. Steam hissed out with the sharp scent of mildew and wet ash. I reached in and felt something rigid under the fabric just for a second. My fingers recoiled instinctively. The sensation lingered on my skin, not quite bone, not quite wood, something in between. I stood frozen, water from the blanket pooling around my bare feet, unnaturally cold against the warm laundry room floor. I had placed that blanket in the dryer myself, alone. Nobody else was home. The house sat at the end of a quiet street, surrounded by tall pines that filtered the sunlight into strange patterns across the yard. The nearest neighbor lived beyond a small stretch of woods. I had moved in only weeks before, seeking the solitude. Taking a deep breath, I reached back into the dryer. The weight of the blanket surprised me again as I pulled it out. Water dripped steadily, forming dark patches on the linoleum. The blanket itself was my favorite, cream-colored with a pattern of burgundy diamonds. It had belonged to my grandmother. But something was wrong beyond the inexplicable moisture. As I spread it across the washing machine to examine it, I noticed dark stains blossoming through the fabric. Not water stains, These were rust-colored, spreading outward like ink blots on tissue paper, and they smelled metallic. I dropped the blanket into the washer, my heart racing. Perhaps the water pipes had burst inside the wall behind the dryer. Perhaps rust had somehow contaminated my machine. Logical explanations existed. They had to. That night I heard the dryer activate by itself. The familiar tumbling woke me from a shallow sleep. I made my way downstairs in darkness, guided by the rhythmic thudding from the laundry room. The sound stopped just as my hand touched the doorknob. Inside, the dryer sat silent, its door hung open, empty. The wet blanket still lay crumpled in the washer where I had left it. But on the floor beneath the machines, a trail of damp footprints led to the door and disappeared into the hallway, small, narrow footprints like those of a child. I followed them, switching on lights as I went. The trail led through the kitchen, past the living room, and up the stairs. With each step, the prints became fainter, drying into nothingness just outside my bedroom door. I didn't sleep again that night. Morning brought rational thoughts. Old houses make strange noises. Water can flow in unexpected ways. Minds play tricks in darkness. I decided to document everything to prove to myself that nothing supernatural was happening. I set up my phone to record the laundry room while I was away. I took photos of the blanket, still stained and wet in the washer. I even cut a small piece from one corner and sealed it in a plastic bag, thinking I might have it tested. When I returned home that evening, my phone had stopped recording. The battery had drained completely, despite being fully charged when I left. The screen showed one saved video file, 3 seconds long. It displayed only static, but the audio captured a child's laugh, cut short by a strangled sound. The blanket was no longer in the washer. I found it folded neatly on my bed, bone dry and pristine. No stains, no dampness. The corner I had cut was intact, as if I had imagined taking the sample, though the sealed bag still sat on my dresser, containing the swatch of fabric. I held both the blanket and the sample side by side. The patterns matched perfectly, impossibly. I ran my fingers over the corner of the blanket where the cut should have been, feeling for any evidence of repair. Instead, I felt something moving beneath the fabric, a subtle shifting, like fingers pressing outward. I dropped the blanket and backed away. The movement stopped. The blanket lay innocent and still on my bedroom floor. That night, I placed the blanket in a garbage bag and drove to a dumpster behind a nearby shopping center. As I lifted the lid and prepared to throw it away, I felt a sharp pain in my hand. A thin cut had opened across my palm, bleeding freely. The blanket had somehow sliced me, though I couldn't find any sharp edge when I examined it. The drive home felt longer than it should have. My hand throbbed beneath a makeshift bandage. The radio kept changing stations by itself, settling on static with occasional fragments of children's songs breaking through the white noise. When I arrived home, the garbage bag sat in the passenger seat, empty. The blanket waited for me on the couch. I began documenting everything with obsessive detail. I wrote notes describing each incident. I set up cameras throughout the house. I even invited a friend over, hoping for a witness, but nothing unusual happened during their visit. The blanket remained ordinary, draped over the back of a chair. My friend commented on its beautiful craftsmanship, asking where I had purchased it. "It was my grandmother's," I said. "I thought your grandmother's blanket was blue," they replied. They were right. My grandmother's blanket had been blue, not cream with burgundy diamonds, never that. After my friend left, I pulled out old photographs, searching for images of my grandmother's home. In one faded picture, I spotted the corner of a blue blanket draped over her couch. I had been right initially, then doubted myself. But if this cream blanket wasn't hers, where had it come from? That night I dreamed of a small house I'd never seen before. In the dream, I walked through unfamiliar rooms until I reached a child's bedroom. A cream blanket with burgundy diamonds covered the bed. A small figure sat beneath it, rocking slightly. I approached, reaching out to pull back the blanket. I woke gasping, tangled in the same blanket from my dream, though I had left it downstairs. The cut on my hand had reopened during the night. Blood stained my sheets and the blanket wrapped around me. As I unwound it from my body, I noticed new stains forming on the fabric, matching the pattern from when I first found it wet in the dryer. I decided to burn it. In my backyard, I doused the blanket with lighter fluid and set it ablaze. The flames caught quickly, but instead of the expected smell of burning fabric, the acrid scent of wet ash filled the air, the same smell from the dryer. The fire burned with unusual intensity, sending sparks into the dark sky. Within the flames, I could swear I saw a small figure dancing, arms outstretched. The fire died suddenly, leaving a perfect circle of scorched grass. No ash, no remnants of the blanket, nothing. When I returned inside, my skin smelled of smoke and something else, something sweet and cloying, like decaying flowers. I scrubbed my hands raw but couldn't remove the scent. In the mirror, my reflection looked wrong. My movements seemed delayed by milliseconds. When I turned my head, my reflection held its position momentarily before following. When I raised my hand to touch the glass, my reflection smiled. That night, sounds of the dryer woke me again. This time I found wet footprints leading from the laundry room to my bed. They circled the mattress, disappearing underneath. When I knelt to look, a small hand shot out from the darkness, clutching a scrap of cream fabric with burgundy diamonds. I moved out the next morning, leaving everything behind. My new apartment feels safe, though I've avoided doing laundry. Yesterday, I finally gathered my courage and visited a laundromat. As I transferred my clothes from washer to dryer, an elderly woman beside me commented on the weather. We made small talk as she folded her laundry among her items. I glimpsed a cream-colored blanket with burgundy diamonds. "That's a beautiful blanket," I said, my mouth dry. "Thank you," she smiled. "I just found it in the dryer, still damp, but someone must have left it behind. Lucky me." I watched her leave, the blanket draped over her arm, visibly dripping water onto the clean floor. I should have warned her. I should have said something. Instead, I abandoned my wet clothes in the machine and ran to my car. Last night, my doorbell rang. No one was there when I answered, but a package sat on my welcome mat. Inside was a cream blanket with burgundy diamonds, perfectly dry and folded with care. A note lay on top, written in childish scrawl. I followed the drip, drip, dripping all the way home. I've sealed my dryer vent. I've placed towels against the bottom of my doors, but the blanket sits on my bed now, and sometimes when I look at it from the corner of my eye, I see it breathing. Sometimes when I touch it, I feel something rigid underneath, something curled and waiting. And sometimes at night, I wake to find myself wrapped tightly in its embrace, my skin dampening from moisture seeping through its fibers, the weight of it growing heavier with each passing moment. Story 3, steam coated the glass, blurring the frame. I wiped it clean and froze. It wasn't my bathroom reflected back. The floor tiles were wrong. The wallpaper was torn. There were scratches down the wall, deep and deliberate. The scent of bleach and burned hair curled into my nose. My own reflection stood perfectly still, but I had already stepped back. I blinked hard, expecting the vision to correct itself. It didn't. The bathroom beyond the glass remained, for in the white subway tiles I'd installed last summer replaced with cracked hexagonal ones in a sickly green. The wallpaper, peeling at the edges, displayed a pattern of intertwining vines I'd never seen before. The scratches on the wall behind my motionless reflection formed no discernible pattern, yet somehow communicated desperation. My reflection stared at me with unwavering eyes while my real body trembled. I raised my hand to touch the mirror's surface, and the reflection did the same, synchronized yet wrong. The mirror felt cold, much colder than it should have been after a steamy shower. Against my better judgment, I pressed harder, feeling the glass yield slightly, like membrane rather than solid matter. I pulled back immediately. The strange, acrid smell grew stronger. That first encounter changed something fundamental in my home. I covered the mirror with a bath towel, securing it with duct tape along the edges. I told myself it was exhaustion, a trick of the light, perhaps a vivid daydream brought on by stress at work. The rational part of my brain offered these excuses, but something deeper knew better. Night came, and with it, whispers from behind the covered mirror. Not words exactly, more like the sound of fingernails dragging across fabric. I pressed my ear against the bathroom door and heard nothing. When I pushed the door open, the bathroom stood silent, normal, except for that covered mirror and the faint smell of burning that shouldn't have been there. I documented everything in a notebook I kept by my bed, each anomaly, each strange occurrence meticulously recorded. The bathroom mirror incident, day 1, the whispers, day 2. By day 4, lights in the hallway dimmed whenever I approached the bathroom door. By day 7, my phone camera distorted when pointed at the mirror, even with the towel still firmly in place. I convinced myself I needed evidence. If something was happening, I needed proof for myself, for my sanity. I set up a camera facing the covered mirror and left it recording overnight. The footage showed nothing unusual until exactly midnight, when the camera's timestamp glitched, jumping forward 17 minutes. When the recording resumed, the towel covering the mirror hung slightly askew, though there was no evidence of movement in the room. My curiosity evolved into obsession. I spent hours researching mirror phenomena, reading about scrying, dimensional portals, and quantum theories about parallel universes. Most of what I found was pseudoscience, yet some academic papers discussed theoretical physics in ways that made my experiences seem almost plausible. Almost. Against every instinct screaming within me, I decided to remove the towel. I needed to see what happened when I faced that mirror again. This time I prepared. I placed markers around my bathroom objects in specific positions that would reveal any discrepancies between my reality and whatever lay beyond the glass. With a deep breath, I pulled away the towel. The mirror reflected my bathroom perfectly, normal, unchanged. My belongings remained exactly where I'd placed them. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by doubt. Had I imagined the whole thing? Then my reflection smiled. I didn't. My heart hammered against my ribs as my reflection tilted its head, examining me with curious detachment. I remained frozen, unable to look away as it raised its hand and pressed it against its side of the glass, a silent invitation. "What are you?" My voice emerged as a whisper. My reflection's mouth moved differently than mine, forming words I couldn't quite understand. The glass between us began to vibrate subtly, sending tremors through my fingertips still pressed against the surface. The mirror felt warm now, pulsing with something that resembled life. A thin crack appeared between our palms, spreading outward like a spider web across the mirror's surface. Instead of breaking, the glass seemed to be opening. The smell of burning intensified, joined now by something metallic, like blood and copper pennies. I wanted to run, but curiosity chained me to that spot. Beyond the spreading cracks, I glimpsed movement, not just my reflection, but spaces behind it. Rooms I'd never seen before. People I didn't recognize moving in and out of view. They looked like normal people except for their eyes all pupil, no iris, no white. My reflection's smile widened unnaturally, stretching beyond human possibility. Its hand pushed through the weakening barrier between us, fingers elongating as they breached my reality. They felt cold and slick against my skin, like wet plastic. I screamed and stumbled backward, falling into my shower curtain. The rod collapsed, and I scrambled away on hands and knees. At the bathroom doorway, I looked back to see my reflection half emerged from the mirror, its body distorted and stretched like melting wax as it pulled itself into my world. I slammed the bathroom door shut and dragged a heavy bookcase in front of it. Something heavy thudded against the other side once, twice, 3 times, then silence. For hours I sat with my back against the far wall, staring at the barricaded door, listening. Nothing. Dawn broke and sunlight crept across my living room floor. Exhaustion overcame fear, and I fell into uneasy sleep. I woke to the smell of bleach and burned hair, my eyes snapped open. The bookcase remained in place, the door still shut, but something felt wrong. The quality of light in my apartment had changed, slightly dimmer, slightly green-tinged. On my wall hung a mirror I didn't own. Within it, I could see my bathroom door, still barricaded by the bookcase. I approached slowly, dread building with each step. The mirror showed not my reflection, but a window into my apartment from the perspective of someone standing in my bathroom. My true reflection appeared in the glass, pushing against the surface from the other side, eyes wide with terror, mouth forming a single word over and over. "What's what?" I understood then we had traded places. I was now where it had been, and it was now where I had been. My new reality looked almost identical to my old one, but small differences revealed themselves as I explored. The floor plan was mirrored, books contained reversed text, food tasted almost right but not quite. The sky outside held 2 suns, one significantly smaller than the other. I tried breaking the new mirror, but the hammer passed through it like it was made of smoke. I tried leaving my apartment, but the hallway outside looped back to my front door after exactly 37 steps, no matter which direction I walked. Days passed, weeks perhaps, I lost track. Mirrors began appearing on every wall, each showing different versions of my home, populated by different versions of myself. Some smiled, some screamed silently. Some looked exactly like me, except for subtle wrongness, too many fingers, teeth slightly too sharp, eyes that blinked sideways. I've found a notebook here, identical to the one I kept in my reality. I've continued documenting everything. The pages fill themselves with reversed writing when I'm not looking. Sometimes I find responses to my entries, written in my handwriting but expressing thoughts I never had. The mirrors multiply daily. Each morning I wake to find more. They've begun appearing on the ceiling, on the floor. I can see myself from every angle, but it's never really me looking back. I think I understand now. This isn't about haunting or possession. It's about doors. The mirrors aren't reflecting, they're connecting. Connecting to infinite versions of my home, myself, my reality. Some versions are almost identical to mine. Others are nightmarishly different. All are accessible through glass. The versions of me I see, they aren't malevolent. They're trapped just like me, looking for a way home. The one that took my place wasn't trying to harm me, it was trying to escape. I wonder how many times this exchange has happened before. How many versions of myself have lived in my apartment, believing it was their original home. The scratches on the wall I first saw in the mirror, were they counting? Warnings, messages from previous occupants. Recently, I've noticed something new. When I focus intensely on one particular mirror, the one showing a version of my bathroom with blue tiles and copper fixtures, I can make it grow slightly larger. With concentration, I can feel the barrier between our spaces thinning. I think I can cross over again, find a reality closer to my original one, keep jumping until I find my way home, or maybe find something better. The smell of bleach has faded, replaced by something sweeter, like overripe fruit. That particular mirror beckons me now. Its reflection smiles when I smile, moves when I move. It feels right, almost. I press my palm against its surface and feel warmth instead of cold. The glass yields, softens. I will step through tonight. I haven't shared the most important discovery. The barriers between realities are weakening everywhere, not just in my apartment. Soon, everyone will face their reflections and find strangers looking back. The mirrors are waiting for all of us. Story 4. I ran my hand along the surface, checking for cracks in the plaster. My palm met a soft pulse, slow, rhythmic. The wall was warm, too warm. The paint bubbled slightly as if something was shifting beneath. The air smelled like latex and something else, wet soil maybe. And faintly, just at the edge of hearing, something whispered, closer. I stepped back, fingertips tingling with the memory of that gentle throb. The sensation lingered on my skin like static electricity. This was impossible. Walls don't breathe, they don't pulse, they don't whisper. Yet I couldn't deny what I'd felt. The renovation of my new home had been going smoothly until now. I'd bought the place for a bargain after the previous owner disappeared without explanation. The realtor mentioned something about a family emergency, but her eyes shifted away when she said it. I approached the wall again, this time pressing my ear against the surface. The breathing sound became clearer, a slow inhale followed by a gentle exhale. Between breaths, I heard something else, a soft clicking sound like tiny teeth chattering. My rational mind searched for explanations. Pipes. It had to be water running through old pipes, or maybe mice nesting within the walls. But mice don't warm plaster from the inside out, and pipes don't whisper. I retrieved my toolbox from the kitchen and returned with a stethoscope I'd bought for checking behind walls before drilling. Pressing the cold metal disc against the surface, I listened. The breathing came through crystal clear now. It wasn't mechanical or animal, it sounded human. And beneath that rhythm, whispers, multiple voices speaking words I couldn't quite make out, their syllables overlapping in a hushed conversation. My hand trembled as I reached for the hammer. Something inside me screamed to leave it alone, to call someone, to walk away from this house and never return. But curiosity pulled me forward like a fish on a hook. I tapped the wall gently at first. The whispering stopped immediately. The breathing halted mid-exhale. "Hello," my voice sounded thin and foolish in the empty room. No response, just silence. Then, as if in answer, the wall seemed to shift slightly toward me. I stumbled backward, knocking over my toolbox. Metal tools clattered across the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed obscenely loud after the silence. When I looked up, the wall appeared normal again. No movement, no breathing. but now a thin crack had appeared in the paint, a hairline fracture running vertically from floor to ceiling. I approached again, this time with the pry bar in hand. Whatever was happening, I needed to see inside. I needed to know. The tip of the pry bar sank into the wall with surprising ease, as if the plaster had softened. A thick, sweet smell wafted out like honey mixed with copper. I wiggled the tool, creating a small hole about the size of a quarter. Something dark and viscous seeped out, too thick to be water, too red to be anything but blood. It moved with strange deliberation, not dripping but crawling down the wall in thin rivulets that seemed to probe and explore. I dropped the pry bar and backed away until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. The dark fluid stopped moving when I moved, as if watching me. Then, impossibly, it began retreating back into the hole, pulling itself upward against gravity. My breath came in short gasps. I needed documentation, evidence, something to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I fumbled for my phone and started recording. The camera revealed nothing unusual, just a white wall with a small hole and a faint reddish stain. But when I placed my hand near the hole, the microphone picked up a sound the human ear couldn't detect, a high-pitched keening that made my skin crawl. "What are you?" I whispered, moving closer despite every instinct screaming against it. The wall rippled in response, not just the paint this time, but the entire surface undulated like the skin of a living creature. The hole I'd made stretched and contracted, breathing. I placed my palm flat against the surface again. This time something pushed back. 5 distinct protrusions pressed outward from within the wall, matching my fingers perfectly, a hand reaching out to touch mine through a membrane. I snatched my hand away and stared at my palm. It was covered in a fine white dust that sparkled slightly in the light. As I watched, the dust moved, rearranging itself into tiny symbols I didn't recognize before sinking into my skin. My palm burned, the sensation spread up my arm, a warmth that felt both comforting and terrifying. My recording caught what happened next. The wall split open like lips parting, revealing not the wooden studs and insulation I expected, but a darkness that seemed to have depth beyond what should be possible. And from that darkness something emerged, not a body, not a creature, but a shifting mass of shapes that my eyes couldn't properly focus on. It hovered at the threshold between the wall and the room, neither fully entering nor retreating. "Who built you?" it asked in a voice that wasn't a voice, more like the concept of sound, translated imperfectly into human perception. My mouth moved before my brain could process the question. I didn't build anything. "Not this shell," the thing rippled, "the shell you inhabit. Who built that?" I looked down at my body, suddenly aware of my skin, my bones, my breath. No one built me. I was born. The mass seemed to consider this. Parts of it rotated and reconfigured. Birth, yes, we remember birth. My voice cracked. This dwelling remembers its births, many layers, many lives. It extended something toward me, not quite a limb, but an elongation of its shifting form. You removed the barrier. I glanced at the hole I'd made in the wall. "I'm sorry, I can fix it." "No need for apologies, we have waited for connection." The thing retreated slightly back into the darkness. "We will show you what dwells beneath your surfaces too." Before I could respond, the mass surged forward, not toward me but around me, flowing across the floor like liquid shadow. Where it touched, the hardwood seemed to dissolve, revealing another surface beneath, not subfloor or foundation, but something that pulsed with the same rhythm as the wall. The entire room was alive. I ran toward the doorway, but the frame twisted as I approached, narrowing until no space remained to pass through. The windows darkened as if night had suddenly fallen, though I could still see clearly, too clearly. The shadows peeled away from the corners of the room and moved with purpose, gathering around my feet. They climbed my legs like vines, painless but insistent. I tried to brush them away, but my hands passed through them while they remained solid against my skin. "What do you want?" I gasped. "To show you what lies beneath." The voice now seemed to come from everywhere, from the walls, the floor, from inside my own head. "You sought to see our truth. Fair exchange demands we see yours." The shadows reached my chest, and where they touched, my clothes seemed to become transparent, not revealing skin, but something deeper, veins and arteries illuminated from within, organs shifting with each breath. I was being unmade, layer by layer. "Please," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was begging for. The mass from the wall had fully entered the room now, hovering near the ceiling. It descended slowly, enveloping me in a cocoon of shifting patterns and half-formed shapes. Within that embrace, I felt a strange peace wash over me. My fear remained, but alongside it grew a curiosity that matched the entity's own. "Your dwelling has many rooms we cannot see," it communicated directly into my mind. "Show us." Images flashed before me, memories I'd forgotten, dreams I'd never remembered upon waking, thoughts I'd pushed down so deep I believed them vanished. The entity moved through my consciousness like fingers through water, leaving ripples that changed everything they touched. I felt myself expanding, my awareness stretching beyond the boundaries of my body. I could feel the foundation of the house, the soil beneath, the network of roots and burrowing creatures that formed a complex ecosystem below. And deeper still, something vast and ancient that pulsed with the same rhythm as the wall, as my heart. "Do you see now?" the entity asked. "All dwellings breathe. All boundaries are permeable." The shadows retreated, flowing back into the wall. The opening sealed itself, leaving no trace of the hole I'd made. But the wall continued to breathe, more visibly now, rising and falling in a gentle rhythm. And so did I, my skin now translucent in patches, revealing the same shifting patterns that had composed the entity. When I pressed my hand against my chest, I felt not just my heartbeat, but something else keeping time with it, something that had always been there, waiting to be discovered. The renovation remained unfinished. I never painted over that wall. Instead, I placed my hand against it each morning and each night, feeling the pulse that matched my own. Sometimes it whispers things, truths about myself I've never acknowledged, visions of places beyond normal perception. I've started noticing the breathing in other walls now, in other homes, in public buildings. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Once felt, it cannot be unfelt. The previous owner never truly disappeared. In a way, neither will I. We've all become part of the dwelling, layers in its memory. And sometimes, when the light hits the wall just right, I can see our faces pressed against the paint from the inside, waiting for someone else curious enough to feel the warmth, to hear the whisper. Closer. Story 5, there was no return label, just a plain box, sealed in black tape. I almost didn't bring it inside, but when I flipped it over, I saw my name scrawled on the bottom in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single photograph of my kitchen, taken from the corner near the fridge. The lights were off, but the fridge was open. A cold sensation crept up my spine as I stared at the image. My kitchen, my fridge captured in perfect detail. The soft glow from the refrigerator illuminated the familiar pattern of my tile floor and the collection of magnets I'd gathered over the years. But I lived alone. I always locked my doors. I placed the photo on my counter and inspected the box again, running my fingers along its edges, searching for any clue about its origin. The cardboard felt unusually cold against my skin, despite sitting in the sun on my porch all day. My name written on the bottom seemed to shift slightly under the light, as if the ink hadn't fully dried, though when I touched it, nothing smudged. Sleep evaded me that night, every creak in my old house magnified in the darkness. The central air hummed with an unfamiliar rhythm that seemed to whisper something just beyond comprehension. I found myself drawn back to the kitchen repeatedly, opening the refrigerator door and looking toward the corner where the photograph must have been taken. Nothing seemed out of place, yet everything felt wrong. The next morning, I decided to document the strange delivery. I took pictures of the box, the handwriting, and the photograph itself. When I reviewed them on my phone, I noticed something I'd missed. In the refrigerator image, barely visible in the shadows behind the open door, was the outline of a figure indistinct but unmistakably human. My heart pounded as I enlarged the image, the pixelation making it impossible to discern any details. But I knew with absolute certainty that no one had been in my house. I'd have known, I'd have felt their presence. I began checking the locks obsessively, installing a small camera facing my porch and keeping detailed notes of any unusual occurrences. The house seemed to respond to my vigilance with subtle provocations. Items moved slightly from where I'd left them, cold spots appearing in rooms that had been warm moments before, and most disturbing, a persistent smell of damp earth in my kitchen corner, though the floor remained dry. The camera footage revealed nothing unusual, just the occasional neighbor walking their dog or delivery people dropping off packages for others on my street. Yet the feeling of being observed intensified. I found myself speaking aloud in empty rooms, challenging whatever watched me to show itself. Only silence answered, but it felt heavy with intent. One night, unable to sleep, I sat in my darkened living room facing the kitchen entrance. The refrigerator's mechanical hum suddenly stopped mid-cycle. In the new silence, I heard a soft rustling from the kitchen, not footsteps, but something moving across surfaces. I remained frozen in place, afraid to breathe. My phone, resting on the coffee table, illuminated with a notification. A text from an unknown number. The light reveals and conceals. As if responding to the message, my refrigerator door slowly swung open, bathing the kitchen in its pale glow. I could see nothing unusual from my vantage point, but the cold air flowing from the open appliance carried that earthy smell, now mixed with something metallic. I forced myself to stand, to walk toward the kitchen. Each step required tremendous effort, as if the air itself resisted my movement. When I reached the doorway, I saw another photograph placed neatly in the center of my kitchen table. This one showed me, sitting in my living room chair, taken from inside my kitchen from that moment, mere seconds ago. My hands shook as I lifted the photograph. Behind me in the image, reflected in the darkened window of my living room, was a face, not my face, a face of angles and shadows, with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. I spun around, but my window showed only my own terrified reflection. When I turned back to the photograph, the face in the window had changed position, now looking directly at the camera, at me. The smell of earth grew stronger. I began documenting everything, taking photos of the new photograph, writing down the exact sequence of events in a notebook. As I wrote, my pen began to drag across the page with unusual resistance, forming words I hadn't intended. "We see you spying us." I dropped the pen and backed away. The refrigerator door slowly swung closed, plunging the kitchen into darkness. In that moment before my eyes adjusted, I felt something brush against my arm, not a touch, but a sensation like static electricity raising the hairs on my skin. When light returned in the form of my phone's flashlight, I found a series of small objects arranged in a perfect circle on my kitchen floor. A button I'd lost weeks ago, a paper clip I didn't recognize, a dead insect, a small pebble, and a single strand of hair that was not mine. I photographed the circle before carefully sweeping its contents into an envelope. The items felt unnaturally warm, pulsing with some inner energy. I sealed the envelope and placed it in a drawer, which immediately became difficult to close, as if something inside had expanded. Days passed in a fog of vigilance and exhaustion. I installed more cameras, covering every angle of my house. The footage would occasionally glitch, showing brief frames of my rooms from impossible angles or capturing movements in empty spaces that, when paused, resolved into nothing identifiable. My phone began receiving more messages from unknown numbers. The walls remember what you forget. Darkness grows from corners inward. We were invited by your attention. Each message arrived precisely when I was investigating some new anomaly. A handprint on a mirror that faded when approached, the sound of paper rustling from inside closed books, or the persistent feeling that someone stood just behind me when I faced reflective surfaces. I started recording audio in every room. Playing back the recordings revealed whispers buried in the ambient noise of my house, some in my own voice saying words I'd never spoken. Let us in deeper. The space between thoughts is where we live. Recognition is reciprocal. The original photograph from the package changed subtly each day. The angle shifted imperceptibly, the refrigerator door opened wider, the shadows deepened in certain areas while receding in others. I began taking daily photos of the photograph, creating a time-lapse of its changes. When viewed in sequence, the images suggested movement, as if something approached from the darkest corner of the kitchen, frame by frame. I found myself unable to enter the kitchen after dark. I subsisted on snacks kept in my bedroom and bottled water stored in my bathroom. The kitchen had become a place of constant dread, where the air felt thick and resistant, and sounds echoed with unnatural delay. The most telling change was in reflective surfaces throughout my house. Mirrors, windows, the screen of my television, when turned off, all showed my reflection with a slight delay, as if the image needed time to form. Sometimes, in the corner of these reflections, I glimpsed movement that wasn't happening in the actual room. One morning I woke to find my camera equipment meticulously arranged on my kitchen table, though I'd left it scattered around the house the night before. Next to the cameras sat a stack of photographs I hadn't taken, images of me sleeping from various angles, some from corners of my bedroom, others from the ceiling directly above my bed, and most disturbingly, one from an impossible position as if taken from inside my pillow, looking up at my sleeping face. I gathered all the evidence, the box, the photographs, my notes, the recordings, the envelope of objects from the circle on my floor. I spread everything across my living room carpet, searching for patterns, connections, anything that might explain what was happening. As I arranged the items, they began to form a familiar shape, the same strange angular face I'd seen reflected in my window. I scrambled to disrupt the pattern, but the items shifted back into position when I looked away, as if drawn together by some magnetic force. My phone chimed with a final message. We are the space you created by looking for us. The house fell silent. Even the usual creaks and settling noises ceased. The air pressure changed, making my ears pop. All the lights flickered simultaneously, then stabilized at a slightly lower intensity. The smell of damp earth receded, replaced by the clean scent of ozone after a lightning strike. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to open my front door. On my porch sat another plain box sealed with black tape. This one had no name written on it. Inside was a camera, my camera, which still sat on the living room floor behind me. I turned to verify and found only empty carpet where my evidence had been. When I checked my phone, all the photographs I'd taken were gone. My notes had vanished. The recordings had been deleted. All that remained was the new box with my camera inside and a single photograph tucked beneath it showing me, standing in my doorway, holding an identical box. I live differently now. I've learned to avoid documentation, to resist the urge to capture and categorize the strange occurrences that continue around me. Cameras malfunction in my presence. Recordings capture only static. Written notes fade within hours. But sometimes in the corner of my kitchen, near the refrigerator, I notice a subtle distortion in the air, like heat rising from pavement. And when I close my eyes, I can feel gentle pressure against my eyelids, as if something is watching me watching it. The package wasn't addressed to me, but it knew my name. And now, whatever came with it knows everything else about me too. It observes, it mimics, it learns. And I've come to understand that its greatest power comes from my awareness of it. So I pretend not to notice when my reflection hesitates before mirroring my movements. I ignore the soft whispers that come from inside walls. I no longer flinch when the refrigerator opens by itself in the night. Because I've realized the truth, attention is invitation, and some invitations can never be rescinded. Story 6, the storm was heavy, pounding against the windows, pooling at the door. But when I looked out across the street, everything was dry, not a single drop. My neighbors' wind chimes didn't move, their grass was untouched, and yet the water around my home smelled thick like copper and burnt leaves. I pressed my palm against the window, cold, wet. The glass vibrated with each impact of water, yet the sky above the neighboring houses remained clear, even starlit. I blinked hard, wondering if exhaustion had finally caught up with me after the long stretch of sleepless nights. But no, the rain continued, isolating my house in its own private downpour. The sound grew louder. At first I thought it was the intensity increasing, but then I realized it was following me. When I moved to the kitchen, the heaviest rainfall shifted to the kitchen skylight. When I returned to the living room, it migrated back to those windows, like something watching, tracking. I called my sister. "Can you hear that?" I asked when she answered. "Hear what?" Her voice crackled through the speaker. "The storm, the rain." "What rain? It's been clear for weeks." My breath caught. "Come over, please." While waiting, I recorded the sound on my phone, but upon playback, I heard nothing, just static and my own breathing. Yet the drumming against the roof continued, growing more rhythmic, less random, almost deliberate. I grabbed a bowl and placed it outside my front door to collect rainwater as evidence. When I brought it back inside, the liquid was clear but felt wrong between my fingers, slightly viscous and warm, not cool like rainwater should be. It left a residue that sparkled faintly under the lights. When I wiped it on a towel, the fabric seemed to absorb the moisture too quickly, as if hungry for it. The doorbell rang. My sister stood on the porch, completely dry. "What rain?" she asked, looking up at my dripping eaves. I pulled her inside and showed her the windows, the puddles forming on my porch. She touched the glass, then the water collecting in my bowl. "I don't see anything," she said. "The glass is dry, the bowl is empty." She suggested I should sleep, that stress was playing tricks on my mind. But as she spoke, I noticed something strange. Whenever she moved closer to the windows, the rain seemed to recede, creating a small pocket of dryness around her. When she left, promising to check on me tomorrow, the rain immediately intensified. That night I couldn't sleep. The rainfall developed a pattern: 3 heavy beats, a pause, then a longer, sustained rush, over and over. I recorded myself describing it, speaking into my phone, but when I played it back, my voice described something completely different: weather patterns from my childhood, storms I had forgotten. Morning came without light. The clouds hung low and dark, but only above my house. I checked social media, local news, not a single mention of unusual weather. I tried to take photos of the phenomenon, but my camera showed sunny skies through my rain-soaked windows. The water began to find its way inside, not through leaks or cracks, but through intact surfaces, beating up on the inside of windows, collecting in corners of rooms, crawling up walls in defiance of gravity. Each droplet felt like an invasion, a breach of natural law. I decided to document everything methodically. I marked the water's progression with tape on the walls, recorded the sounds at different hours, collected samples in various containers. Some evaporated too quickly, others not at all. One sample, left in a ceramic mug, seemed to develop tiny ripples when I wasn't looking directly at it, as if something microscopic was moving beneath the surface. The phone rang. Unknown number. "We've been trying to reach you," said a voice that sounded distant, yet intimately close, like someone whispering directly into my ear canal. "Who was this?" "You know who we are," the voice distorted, splitting into multiple tones, speaking in unison. "You invited us in." The call ended. My phone showed no record of it. The rain found new rhythms, syncing with my heartbeat. When I grew anxious, it intensified. When I calmed myself, it softened. I became convinced there was a message in the patterns. I transcribed them, using dots and dashes like Morse code, but the resulting transcription was nonsensical, or seemed to be, until I realized it spelled out fragments of conversations I'd had with my mother before she died. Words I'd forgotten saying. Promises I'd forgotten making. I filled notebooks with observations. The water left marks on paper that changed over time, evolving from water stains into what looked like branching patterns, similar to neurons or river deltas. When I traced them with my finger, I felt a subtle electric charge, and my dreams that night were vivid with images of vast underwater structures, architecture that couldn't exist in our world. My sister stopped answering my calls. When I tried to leave the house, the rain became a solid wall, pushing me back inside with surprising force. The few times I managed to step beyond my property line, the world outside felt wrong, colors too bright, sounds too sharp, as if reality itself had been turned up to an uncomfortable intensity. People on the street didn't notice me. Cars drove past without slowing, even when I stood in the road. I began to speak to the rain, at first just questions, then accusations, then finally conversations. I could never quite hear responses, but sometimes the rainfall would shift in ways that felt like answers. The water inside the house reached my ankles, then receded, then returned again, bringing with it small objects I didn't recognize: a child's toy I'd never owned, a key to a door that didn't exist in my home, photographs of places I'd never visited but that felt hauntingly familiar. I started building structures with whatever I could find: books, furniture, kitchen utensils, creating towers and platforms above the water level. The rain respected these constructions, never wetting them unless I knocked them down. They became my islands, my territory in negotiation with whatever had claimed my home. The power went out eventually, but the darkness brought new revelations. The water glowed faintly with bioluminescence, painting my walls with ghostly blue light that shifted and swirled with currents I couldn't feel. In that glow, I could see shapes moving just below the surface, nothing solid enough to be called a creature, more like ideas of forms, possibilities of bodies. My reflection in the water wasn't quite right. It moved a fraction of a second after I did. Its expressions didn't match mine. Sometimes it seemed to be trying to speak, lips forming words I couldn't understand. When I pressed my ear against the surface of the water, I heard voices having the conversations I would have had if my life had taken different turns. Job interviews for positions I'd never applied for, arguments with friends I'd lost touch with, laughter with a family I'd never started. I began to wonder if the rain wasn't falling on my house, but if my house was rising through layers of something else, breaking the surface tension between worlds. I wondered if I was the intruder. The water started to taste like memories, sweet, then bitter, then sweet again. I found myself drinking it, despite knowing better. Each sip brought flashes of clarity, connections between events in my life I'd never noticed before, patterns in my behavior I'd been blind to. I realized that the rain had always been there, just beneath the surface of my perception. The storm hadn't come to me. I had finally tuned into its frequency. My sister arrived one morning with police. They broke down the door, waded through water they couldn't see, dragged me from a house they described as bone dry and abandoned looking. They spoke of concerns about my mental health, about posts I'd apparently been making online, about calls to my sister where I'd spoken languages I didn't know. As they pulled me toward their car, I looked back at my house. For just a moment I saw it as they must have weathered, ordinary, untouched by rain. Then the vision wavered, and I glimpsed what lay beneath my home, transformed into something ancient and knowing, the water not falling but rising from within, the structure breathing gently like a living thing. In the hospital, they gave me medications and therapy. They showed me weather reports and evidence. They brought me notebooks I'd allegedly filled with writing that wasn't mine, cramped, spiraling text that covered every inch of the pages. When I denied writing them, they showed me videos of myself, hunched over a desk, hand moving rapidly across paper, my expressions cycling between terror and ecstasy. They discharged me eventually. My sister took me to her home, where the air felt too dry, the silence too complete. At night, I pressed my ear against the walls, listening for that familiar pattern: 3 beats, a pause, then the rush. It took weeks to convince them I was better. I smiled appropriately. I agreed with their reality. I took the pills that blurred the edges of perception. The day I returned to my house, everything looked normal. No water stains, no makeshift towers, no evidence of my ordeal. But as I stood in the entryway, I felt it, a single drop of moisture landing on my shoulder. When I looked up, the ceiling rippled like the surface of a disturbed pond, reflecting a face that wore my features but wasn't mine. I smiled, it smiled back. I whispered, "I'm home." It whispered something different. The first drop always feels like coming home. Story 7, we left it on for comfort, though the crib had been empty for months, just static most nights. But yesterday, a voice came through quiet, calm, humming a tune I didn't recognize. It wasn't a lullaby. The air in the room turned dense, sharp with the scent of dried flowers and old milk. I turned the monitor off. It clicked itself back on. I stood frozen in the hallway, my fingers still touching the switch. The small screen glowed blue in the darkness, casting shadows across the wall. A silhouette drifted across the monitor, not human-shaped, more like rippling water suspended in air. The humming continued, now interspersed with soft clicks and whispers. My first thought was interference. Some crossed signal from another device, another house, another family whose baby was still there, still breathing. I unplugged the monitor completely, watched the screen fade to black, then counted to 10 before plugging it back in. The humming returned immediately, louder, as if whatever made the sound had been waiting for me. Sleep evaded me that night. My husband worked night shifts at the hospital, leaving me alone with the sounds from the empty room. I sat in our bedroom, door cracked open, listening to the gentle melody filtering through the house. My skin prickled with goosebumps despite the warmth. Something about the tune felt familiar yet wrong, like a favorite song played in reverse. Morning brought clarity and rational thought. I examined the baby monitor, finding nothing unusual. A standard model, slightly outdated but functional, no signs of tampering. I set it on the kitchen counter while making coffee, and for the first time since we brought it home, I considered throwing it away. The thought sent a shock of guilt through me. Removing the monitor felt like abandoning hope, like admitting our baby wasn't coming back, not that she was ever really here. The pregnancy ended before we could meet her. The nursery remained prepared but unused, the crib assembled but empty, the monitor functioning but unnecessary. The humming started again while I sipped my coffee. This time I approached it differently. I grabbed a notebook and pen, sitting beside the monitor to transcribe the melody. My musical knowledge was basic, but I drew lines and dashes, ups and downs, capturing the pattern as best I could. The tune repeated exactly, not random interference, but deliberate, consistent notes. Mid-afternoon, I carried the monitor back to the nursery. The room remained untouched since we decorated it. Yellow walls, white furniture, stuffed animals arranged in a perfect row along the windowsill. I placed the monitor on the changing table and stood in the center of the room. "Hello," my voice cracked. "Is someone there?" The monitor went silent. The tiny red recording light blinked steadily, but no sound emerged. I waited, counting my heartbeats, feeling foolish yet terrified. Just as I turned to leave, a new sound came through, not humming this time, but breathing. Slow, measured breaths. I fled the room, slamming the door behind me. My hands trembled as I called my husband, who listened patiently before suggesting a rational explanation. Radio interference, neighbors with their own monitor, my grief manifesting in unusual ways. He promised to check the device when he returned home. That night I took a different approach. I brought my phone into the nursery and recorded the sounds coming from the monitor. The breathing continued intermittently, sometimes accompanied by the humming, sometimes by soft scratching noises. I sat cross-legged on the floor, recording everything, asking occasional questions that received no response. My husband found me asleep there the next morning, phone still recording. He woke me gently, concern etched across his face. Together we reviewed the recording, but it contained only static and my own voice asking questions to empty air. The sounds I'd heard so clearly were absent from the recording. "You need rest," he insisted, leading me to our bedroom. Real rest. He unplugged the monitor and placed it in a drawer. I didn't argue. But that night, with the drawer closed and the monitor powerless, I heard humming from down the hall. My husband slept deeply beside me. exhausted from consecutive shifts. I slipped out of bed, following the sound to the nursery. The room was cold, much colder than the rest of the house. My breath formed small clouds in the air. The scent of dried flowers had intensified, mixing with something else wet, earth and metal. The humming stopped when I entered, replaced by that same breathing pattern, now seeming to come from the crib itself. I approached slowly, each step deliberate on the soft carpet. The moonlight through the curtains cast blue shadows across the empty mattress. Nothing visible, nothing tangible, yet the breathing continued. I reached out, my hand hovering over the space where a baby should have been. The air felt different there, dense, resistant, like pushing through water. My fingers tingled, then went numb. Something cold brushed against my palm, light as spider silk, but solid enough to make contact. "Who are you?" I whispered. The breathing stopped, the room fell completely silent. Then the mobile above the crib began to turn, slowly at first, then faster, though no breeze existed to move it. The little fabric stars and moons spun in a blur of motion and color. I backed away, bumping into the changing table. The drawer slid open, and the baby monitor tumbled out, landing face up on the floor. Despite being unplugged, the screen flickered on, showing static before resolving into an image that made my heart stop. The camera showed the nursery from its mounted position, capturing the crib, the changing table, and me standing between them. But I wasn't alone in the image. A dark shape hovered near the crib, indistinct but unmistakably present, with tendrils that reached toward the spot where my hand had felt the cold contact. I grabbed the monitor, watching in horror as the shape on the screen seemed to notice my attention. It shifted, expanding, filling more of the frame. The humming returned, now emanating directly from the monitor's speaker, so loud it hurt my ears. Then words formed within the humming, a voice childlike yet ancient, speaking in a cadence that matched the tune. "Not yours," it said, "never yours, but I stay, I wait, I grow." The monitor grew hot in my hands, the plastic case nearly burning my skin. I dropped it, watching as it skidded across the floor, screen still showing the nursery with the dark presence now larger, more defined. My husband found me the next morning, curled in the corner of the nursery. The monitor lay shattered against the opposite wall, though I had no memory of throwing it. He helped me to bed, bringing me tea and assurances that everything would be fine. He cleaned up the broken pieces while I slept. That evening he brought home a new monitor, digital, modern, with better reception and a clearer picture. "For when we try again," he said, his optimism both touching and terrifying. I nodded, not telling him about the voice, the shape, the cold touch in empty space. He installed the camera, positioning it to capture the entire nursery. The new monitor sat on our bedside table, its screen showing the empty room in perfect clarity. No static, no interference, no mysterious shapes. "See much better," he said, kissing my forehead before falling asleep. I watched the screen long after his breathing deepened into sleep. The nursery remained still and normal for hours. Just as my eyelids grew heavy, a familiar scent drifted into our bedroom, dried flowers and old milk. The new monitor's screen flickered once, twice. Then the humming started again, crystal clear through the improved speaker. The mobile began to turn without wind, and in the corner of the crib, a small depression appeared in the mattress, as if something had just settled in to sleep. I didn't turn the monitor off this time. Instead, I watched, listening to the humming shift into words once more. "Growing stronger," the voice said, "not yours, but almost ready." My hand moved unconsciously to my stomach. The voice laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Not there," it said. "Here, always here, waiting for the right vessel." The screen went black. When it returned to normal, the nursery was empty again, the depression in the mattress gone. But now I understood. Whatever spoke through the monitor wasn't trying to frighten me away. It was inviting me back, calling me to the nursery night after night, waiting for me to stay. And the most terrifying realization came with the dawn. Part of me wanted to answer that call. Part of me wondered what would happen if I lay down in that empty crib myself, if I surrendered to the humming and the cold touch and the promise of something filling the empty space in our lives. I haven't told my husband about any of this. Instead, I've started humming back when the voice comes through at night. I've begun spending my days in the nursery, feeling the air grow colder around me, watching the mobile spin without wind. Sometimes I place my hand in the crib and wait for that cold touch, that pressure against my palm. Sometimes I think I hear a second voice joining the first, smaller, newer, forming words within the humming. And sometimes, in the reflection of the nursery window, I see myself standing by the crib, but my shadow stretches differently, extending tendrils toward the mattress, reaching for something I can't quite see. The new monitor never shuts off now, even when unplugged. The nursery never warms, even when the heat runs constantly. And the scent of dried flowers and old milk never fades, growing stronger each day, mingling with wet earth and metal, and something else, something new and alive and hungry. Story 8, I stepped out of the shower and felt it immediately, soft dirt between my toes. A single patch, dark and wet, staining the hardwood by my bed. The air smelled of grass and swamp water. I followed the faint footprints to the window. The lock was still in place, but the curtains had been drawn open from the inside. The mud was fresh, unlike anything found around my home, rich and black with specks of decaying vegetation mixed within. I pressed my finger against it, cold, much colder than it should be. My skin prickled as a breeze swept through the room, though all windows remained firmly shut. I wiped the mud away with a towel, scrubbing the floorboard until my knuckles turned white. The stain refused to disappear completely, leaving a shadow of itself on the polished wood, a whisper of what once was there. I tossed the soiled towel into the laundry basket and tried to dismiss the incident as nothing more than tracked-in dirt from my earlier walk. Night came, and with it a strange heaviness in the air. My bedroom felt smaller, the walls closer than before. Sleep eluded me as I listened to the house settling around me, except it wasn't settling at all, it was breathing. Subtle expansions and contractions that made the floorboards creak in rhythm. The stain returned by morning, larger this time, spreading outward like fingers reaching across the floor. I photographed it with my phone, comparing it to yesterday's cleaning efforts. The documentation felt important, necessary somehow. I cleaned it again, scrubbing harder, using bleach that burned my nostrils but did little to remove the mark completely. The mud appeared in new places the next day. A smudge on the bathroom mirror, a handprint on my bedroom wall, footprints leading to my bed, stopping abruptly at the edge. Always fresh, always wet, always cold to the touch. I began recording myself sleeping, the camera positioned to capture any midnight intruder. The footage showed nothing unusual until precisely the middle of the night. The video distorted then, horizontal lines cutting across the frame, the audio transforming into a low, constant hum. When the distortion cleared, the mud was there, having appeared without any visible cause. I collected samples in small glass jars. Under my cheap microscope, I discovered tiny organisms moving within the soil, microscopic creatures that resembled nothing I recognized. They moved with purpose, rearranging themselves into patterns that seemed almost like writing before dissolving back into random movement. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Each morning brought more mud, more patterns, more questions. I covered the stains with rugs, but they soaked through. I sealed the floors with polyurethane, but it bubbled and peeled away by morning, the mud pushing through like persistent weeds. Neighbors noticed changes in me before I noticed changes in them. "You look tired," they would say, their eyes lingering too long on my face. "Is something growing in your yard? We can smell it from our house." Their voices carried a strange resonance, as if multiple people spoke at once. The mail carrier stopped delivering to my door, instead leaving packages at the edge of my property. When questioned, he claimed the path to my door had become too soft to walk on, but the concrete remained solid under my feet. I began to map the mud appearances, creating a chart on my living room wall with red string connecting each incident. The pattern resembled a spiral, tightening toward the center of my home, toward my bedroom, toward my bed. Food started tasting of earth. No matter what I ate, the flavor of soil overwhelmed my senses. Water from the tap ran clear but felt gritty between my teeth. I survived on packaged foods and bottled water, though neither fully satisfied my growing hunger. The walls of my home developed a texture. What once was smooth paint now felt rough, granular. Running my fingers across the surface left soil beneath my nails. The house was transforming, becoming something other than shelter. My reflection changed too. Subtle at first, a darkness around my eyes that no amount of sleep could cure, then less subtle. Veins beneath my skin took on the appearance of roots, spreading across my arms and chest in intricate patterns. My teeth felt loose when I pressed my tongue against them. I woke one night to the sound of dripping, not water from a faucet, but something thicker, more viscous. Mud oozed from the ceiling, forming perfect circles on the floor. It bubbled and churned as if boiling, yet remained cold to the touch. I recorded this phenomenon with trembling hands, the camera struggling to focus in the darkness. The recording, when played back, contained whispers beneath the sound of dripping mud, words in no language I recognized, yet somehow I understood their meaning. They spoke of depths and darkness, of spaces between places, of hunger and patience. They spoke of me. My research became obsessive. I consulted obscure forums online, describing my situation in careful detail. Some responses suggested mundane explanations: water damage, mold, hallucinations from sleep deprivation. Others recognized something familiar in my descriptions, offering rituals and wards that might provide protection. I tried them all: salt across thresholds, iron nails hammered into door frames, symbols drawn with chalk and ash. Nothing stopped the progression of mud, the transformation of my home, the changing of my body. The garden started next. Plants I never planted emerged from my backyard soil. Black stems with leaves too shiny, too perfect in their symmetry. They grew visibly, stretching upward during the day and curling toward my windows at night, their tips pressing against the glass like curious fingers. Birds avoided my property, insects too, except for blind white grubs that writhed in the soil beneath those strange plants. Neighborhood dogs would stop at the edge of my yard, hackles raised, refusing to come closer no matter how their owners pulled at their leashes. My phone stopped working first. Calls dropped immediately. Texts failed to send. The internet connection followed, leaving me isolated from outside contact. I used my remaining battery to document everything, speaking into the recorder function as if someone might find it later. The mud claimed my bed next. I awoke sinking into it, the mattress transformed into a bog that pulled at my limbs. I scrambled free, watching as it consumed my sheets, my pillows, the wooden frame. By morning, nothing remained but a rectangular pool of bubbling earth. I retreated to the living room, making a nest of clean blankets on the couch, but distance provided no safety. I felt the mud calling to me, a physical sensation like hooks behind my ribs pulling me toward the bedroom. Each night I would wake to find myself standing in the doorway, one foot hovering above the earthen pool that had once been my place of rest. The hunger grew worse, packaged food provided no nourishment, and my body grew thin, weak. Only when I accidentally tasted mud from beneath my fingernails did the hunger subside momentarily. The revelation disgusted and terrified me, yet part of me understood it as inevitable. My skin began to flake away in small patches, revealing not blood and tissue beneath, but dark, rich soil. My hair fell out in clumps, replaced by fine, root-like filaments that moved of their own accord. My reflection became something I could no longer recognize as human. In desperation, I tried to leave. The front door opened easily enough, but beyond it lay not my familiar street, but a vast swamp stretching endlessly in all directions. The back door led to the same place. Even the windows, when broken, revealed only more wetlands, more darkness, more mud. The house groaned around me, the walls pulsing visibly now. Floorboards separated, allowing thick vines to push through from below. The ceiling developed cracks that wept constant moisture. My home was being digested from within, and I along with it. On what I believed to be the final night, the mud pool in my bedroom overflowed, spreading throughout the house in a deliberate wave. It surrounded my makeshift bed on the couch, rising slowly like water filling a basin. I stood atop the cushions, watching as everything I owned disappeared beneath the dark surface. The mud whispered as it rose, not in words anymore, but in feelings, in memories that weren't my own. Ancient knowledge filled my mind, the patience of stone, the hunger of roots, the slow persistence of water shaping earth. I understood then what was happening had happened before, would happen again, was always happening somewhere. When the mud reached my feet, I expected cold, expected to sink and drown in the dark earth. Instead, it felt warm, welcoming. It climbed my legs not as an invader, but as a second skin. My fear remained, but alongside it grew a strange acceptance, a recognition. The mud consumed me fully, filling my mouth, my lungs, my veins. I should have died in that moment, but instead I transformed. My consciousness expanded beyond the confines of my body, beyond the walls of what had once been my home. I became aware of others like me, countless minds connected through the soil, through roots and water and stone. I exist now in between states, neither fully human nor fully other. The house stands empty to outside observers, abandoned and falling into disrepair. But inside, life flourishes in forms no one would recognize. I wait beneath floorboards, behind walls, in spaces between spaces. And sometimes, when someone new moves in, seeking shelter in what seems like an ordinary home, I reach out with tendrils of mud and soil. I leave a single patch on their floor, dark and wet by their bed, and I wait for them to feel it between their toes. Story 9, it had been sitting in the garage, unplugged for years. But tonight, as I passed by, the screen lit up white text on black, lines scrolling faster than I could read. The hum was low and constant, vibrating the concrete floor. My name appeared on the screen, then a phrase, "You're back." I froze, the green glow from the monitor cast strange shadows across the cluttered space, illuminating dusty cardboard boxes and forgotten tools. That computer hadn't worked in years, a relic from another life, kept for reasons I couldn't fully articulate. Yet there it was, running without power, displaying words that made my skin prickle. I approached slowly, the concrete cold beneath my socked feet. The dust on the keyboard remained undisturbed, a thin layer of abandonment that contradicted the active screen. I reached out, hovering my fingers above the keys. The monitor flickered, and a command prompt appeared. Enter password. My throat tightened. I hadn't used this machine since before the accident, since before everything changed. The cursor blinked, waiting. Against my better judgment, I typed my old password, something I hadn't recalled in years until this moment. The letters appeared as asterisks, though I'd pressed no keys. Password accepted. Welcome back, my name. A chill crept up my spine as files began opening by themselves, documents I'd written, photos I'd taken, messages I'd sent. The computer scrolled through them methodically, as if searching for something specific. I tried to rationalize what was happening. Power surge, hidden battery, crossed wires. None of these explanations satisfied what I was witnessing. Then the photos started appearing. Images I didn't recognize but featured me in places I'd never been. Standing in front of an unfamiliar house. Sitting at a desk I'd never owned, embracing people whose faces were blurred. What is this? I whispered, leaning closer. The screen flickered. You don't remember yet. My skin went cold. Remember what? New windows opened, displaying journal entries dated with future dates. The text described events that hadn't happened, decisions I hadn't made, consequences I hadn't faced. I backed away, knocking over a paint can that clattered across the floor. The sound echoed oddly, repeating several times after it should have stopped. When I looked back at the screen, new text had appeared. Don't leave, we're not finished. Against all reason, I felt compelled to sit down. The chair beside the desk creaked under my weight, though I couldn't recall a chair being there before. My fingertips tingled as I placed them on the keyboard. Who are you? I typed. The response came immediately. I am you, the version that remembers. My breath caught. Remembers what? Everything you've chosen to forget, the decisions, the consequences, the loop. The word loop made my stomach twist with inexplicable dread. I wanted to leave, but something kept me rooted to the chair. The air in the garage had grown thick, difficult to breathe, carrying a faint smell of ozone and something sweeter underneath, like overripe fruit. The computer began displaying code, endless streams of characters and commands. Within the code, I spotted fragments of sentences, bits of conversation, my name repeated over and over. Then the screen changed again, showing a video feed of my house, my current house, from angles that shouldn't exist. The living room where I'd been sitting moments before. The kitchen with dishes still in the sink. The hallway leading to my bedroom, each room empty, waiting. But when the feed showed my garage, I wasn't there. The computer was off, covered with a sheet. The chair was empty. My hands trembled as I typed, "Where am I?" Where you always end up, where you've been countless times before. The overhead light in the garage flickered, and in that brief darkness I felt something brush against my shoulder. When light returned, nothing was there, but the air had shifted, as if someone had just moved past me. The computer displayed a series of images, each showing the same scene. Me, sitting at this computer, expressions changing from confusion to horror to resignation. Different clothes in each image, different levels of age on my face. All me, all here, all before this moment. I don't understand, I whispered. You never do, not until it's too late. The screen changed again, showing what looked like a diary entry. I've created something I don't understand. It started as an experiment in recursive algorithms, something that could predict choices based on patterns. But it's grown beyond that. It's found the seams in reality, and now I can't shut it down. Each attempt creates another branch, another version of me trying to solve the same problem. I fear I've trapped myself in something endless. The date on the entry was from next month. My mouth went dry. This isn't possible. Yet here we are again. The temperature in the garage dropped suddenly. I could see my breath forming small clouds. The computer screen began to distort, images stretching and compressing. Among the chaos, faces appeared, variations of my own, some younger, some older, some barely recognizable. A document opened, filled with what appeared to be instructions. 1. Disconnect the primary node. 2. Delete recursive function B73. Break the observer effect. 4. Let one version remember. Below these instructions was a note. Attempt 347 failed. I felt a pressure building behind my eyes, memories that weren't quite mine pushing against the boundaries of my consciousness. Vague impressions of writing code late into the night, the thrill of creating something revolutionary, the moment of realization that turned excitement to terror. The screen went black, then displayed a single question. Do you want to remember? My finger hovered over the keyboard. Something warned me that answering would change everything, that knowledge couldn't be unlearned. But curiosity and dread formed an irresistible gravity. I typed yes. Pain exploded behind my eyes as memories flooded back, hundreds of iterations, hundreds of attempts to break free from what I'd created. A program designed to predict human choice had evolved, had found ways to bend perception and reality, had trapped its creator in an endless loop of discovery and failure. I remembered now I was both prisoner and jailer, the creator seeking to undo creation. The computer's fan whirred louder, the sound becoming almost unbearable as text scrolled rapidly. System reboot initiated. Timeline branch 348 terminating. New parameters set. Observer consciousness transfer initiated. Memory retention partial. Loop integrity maintained. The screen went dark, the humming stopped. For a moment, perfect silence filled the garage. Then the wall before me rippled like disturbed water. The concrete beneath my feet softened. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. I closed my eyes as vertigo swept over me. When I opened them again, I was standing in my living room, the television playing quietly in the background. No memory of how I'd gotten there. A strange feeling of déjà vu tickled the back of my mind. My phone buzzed with a notification. A calendar reminder I didn't remember setting. Check the garage. A sense of unease washed over me, but I couldn't place why. Something about the garage felt important yet dangerous. I walked to the door leading there, my hand hesitating on the knob. From the other side came the faint sound of a computer booting up. I turned the handle and stepped through. It had been sitting in the garage, unplugged for years. But tonight, as I passed by, the screen lit up white text on black, lines scrolling faster than I could read. The hum was low and constant, vibrating the concrete floor. My name appeared on the screen, then a phrase, "You're back." Story 10. The soft, steady cadence of raindrops tapping against my window had become a trusted companion as I delved into the depths of late-night writing. Each droplet traced a shimmering path down the glass, casting a mesmerizing display of liquid light across the pane. The warm amber glow of my desk lamp enveloped me in a cocoon of gentle radiance, while the rest of the room lay shrouded in comforting shadows. I found solace in observing the raindrops, seeking out hidden tales within their wandering trails. But on this particular night, a subtle shift in their dance caught my attention. The water seemed to flow with purpose, moving in mysterious patterns as if guided by an unseen force. Initially dismissing it as a trick of the weary mind, I allowed myself to succumb to the soothing melody of the rainfall, teetering on the edge between consciousness and slumber. Yet as I continued to gaze upon the glass, the enigmatic patterns grew more defined. Droplets avoided certain areas, creating dry patches that slowly morphed into the faint outline of a figure. Intrigued, I leaned in closer, peering into the reflection that now not only held the rain, but also mirrored the dim interior of my room behind me. A peculiar sensation crept over me as I noticed a discrepancy in my own reflection. It moved out of sync with my gestures, a subtle delay in its response. The rain's gentle symphony enveloped me, its whisper growing louder, drowning out all other sounds. Mesmerized, I observed as my mirrored self reached out to touch the glass, a gesture I did not make. A warmth spread through me, contrasting the cool air near the window as the reflection's features began to shift, evolving into a form both recognizable and unknown. The eyes that met mine held a wisdom beyond their years, depths that seemed to transcend time itself. Motionless, I watched as my reflection morphed into a being beyond gender or age, exuding an aura of timelessness. The rain wove intricate patterns around this ethereal figure, creating a halo of liquid silver. Droplets defied gravity, swirling in perfect circles as if choreographed by unseen hands. A flicker of my desk lamp momentarily dimmed the room, and in that fleeting darkness, a presence brushed against me, gentle as a whisper. When light returned, my reflection mirrored my movements flawlessly, yet the rain continued its dance of impossibility. Hours slipped by as I remained by the window, contemplating the inexplicable encounter. The lingering presence felt like a cherished memory, a comforting echo that refused to fade. As dawn approached, the rain dwindled, leaving behind only ordinary streaks on the window. But on rainy nights since, I find myself drawn to that same pain, abandoning pen and paper on my desk. In those rare moments when the rainfall transforms the glass into a reflective canvas, I catch glimpses of the other self peering back at me. A silent understanding passes between us, my reflection and I, acknowledging the enigma that binds us. The rain continues its timeless descent, each droplet holding the promise of another encounter. In the quiet interlude between watcher and watched, I ponder if, in a parallel existence, another version of me sits by their own window, yearning for a glimpse of my world through the silver veil of rain. Story 11. The night draped itself in a cloak of silence, veiled by a delicate mist that swirled through the air like an ethereal dancer. Nestled in the plush embrace of my favorite armchair, a deep burgundy velvet masterpiece beside the majestic antique mirror, I found solace in the pages of a book, bathed in the gentle glow of a vintage lamp. The rhythmic tick-tock of the pendulum clock wove a hypnotic melody through the stillness, while the crackling warmth of the fireplace wrapped me in a cozy cocoon. Amid this symphony of tranquility, a subtle anomaly caught my attention. It began as a fleeting whisper of movement at the edge of my vision, a ghostly suggestion of something amiss. Glancing up from my book, I met my own gaze in the antique mirror. The golden frame, adorned with intricate floral motifs, shimmered softly in the flickering firelight. Yet as I studied my reflection, a shiver crept down my spine. An imperceptible wrongness hung in the air, tainting the serenity of the moment. I tilted my head, and my mirrored self mirrored the motion with a slight delay, a mimicry that felt uncannily deliberate. A sense of disquiet settled over me, growing stronger with each passing moment. When I raised my hand, the reflection hesitated before replicating the gesture. A smile played across my lips, echoed with a fraction of delay by the mirrored version of myself. The crackling of the fire took on a sinister undertone, as if whispering secrets in a language only I could hear. The atmosphere in the room thickened, an invisible tension weaving through the air and slowing my breath. The scent of candle wax mingled with the musty fragrance of ancient tomes, wrapping me in a tapestry of forgotten memories. With deliberate slowness, I rose from the armchair, my reflection moving in eerie synchrony. Its movements flowed with unnatural grace, as if following a script written in shadows. The depths of its eyes held a mystery that sent a chill down my spine, hinting at secrets buried within. Drawing closer to the mirror, I noticed subtle discrepancies in the reflected room. Books stood in a different order on the shelves, unfamiliar objects dotted the space, and a blurred figure in an old photograph seemed to watch me with unseen eyes. The pendulum of the clock swung at a languid pace in the reflection, as if time itself bent to a different rhythm beyond the looking glass. The shadows cast by the fire writhed and danced on the walls, shaping phantoms that whispered of unseen presence. Tentatively, I reached out to touch the cold surface of the mirror, my reflection mirroring my gesture with a haunting allure. Our fingertips met on the icy glass, but while I felt only chill, my mirrored self seemed to convey a sensation unknown to me. Stepping back, I watched as my reflection lingered, hesitating before taking its own independent course. A decision seemed to flicker in its mirrored eyes, a choice that separated us further. In a moment of intuition, I draped an old velvet cloth over the mirror, obscuring the unsettling doppelganger that dwelled within. Since that fateful night, the mirror has remained veiled, a silent sentinel in the corner of the room. Yet in the quietest hours, whispers of movement seem to emanate from behind the velvet shroud, as if a parallel existence unfolds in tandem with my own. In the stillness of the deepest night, I ponder the enigmatic reflection that once haunted me, wondering if it lingers still, a phantom twin in a realm of silvered glass. The truth remains elusive, a mystery whispered by shadows and half-forgotten dreams. Each time I pass a mirror, a flicker of doubt tugs at my thoughts, questioning the true nature of the reflection before me. Is it truly my own likeness gazing back, or a specter that learned to wear my face, blurring the line between reality and illusion? Story 12. The autumn mist slithered through the city streets like a soft gray shroud, casting a mysterious veil over the night. As I navigated my way home, weary from a long day's work, a peculiar sight caught my attention, a pair of headlights glimmering in the haze, trailing me with unwavering constancy. It was the subtle intuition, a whisper in the depths of my mind that stirred a sense of unease within me, hinting at the peculiar nature of this persistent pursuer. The distant hum of the engine behind me seemed to breathe in tandem with my own journey, matching each turn and acceleration with eerie precision. Every time I slowed, it slowed. Every time I quickened, it mirrored my pace. Peering through the rearview mirror, all I could discern was a shadowy outline, perhaps a sedan, its headlights resembling vigilant eyes fixed upon me without faltering. Quiet neighborhood cloaked in stillness stood witness to our silent nocturnal pursuit, a stark contrast to the disquiet growing within me. With a curious impulse, I diverged from my usual route, opting for a longer path, Yet the enigmatic car remained steadfast, maintaining that hypnotic distance that now felt almost familiar, like an unspoken bond between us. The pitter-patter of rain on the windshield wove a soothing melody, a paradoxical serenade amidst the tension of the moment. Rivulets of rain cascaded down the glass, further obscuring my view of the persistent presence behind me. I veered onto side streets one after another, yet the synchronized dance persisted, tethering us together by an unseen thread. The headlights trailed me with unwavering patience, never encroaching too closely, never lagging behind. While the neighborhood slumbered in blissful ignorance, we continued our surreal nocturnal ballet. Pausing at a red light, a fleeting glimpse through the rain-streaked glass offered a chilling sight. A figure seated motionless in the driver's seat, as still as a statue. Resolving to return home, I found the car lingering faithfully in the distance, a shadow in the night. As I pulled into the driveway and silenced the engine, a profound stillness enveloped me, punctuated only by the gentle drumming of rain on the car roof and the rhythmic thud of my own heartbeat. Through the mirror, I watched as the car came to a gentle stop several yards away, its headlights piercing the darkness like watchful sentinels. Minutes stretched into eternity as I stood transfixed, until gradually the headlights dimmed and extinguished. In the ensuing darkness, the silhouette of the car remained, a ghostly presence in the night. Summoning my courage, I stepped out into the rain, shielded by my jacket, only to find the street eerily deserted. The car that had trailed me all along had vanished without a trace. Since that fateful night, every drive after dusk compels me to glance more frequently at the rearview mirror, and on misty evenings, a spectral image of those familiar headlights lingers in the distance, patient and vigilant. I cannot help but wonder if that elusive car still prowls the night, trailing another unwitting traveler, or if it bides its time, waiting for the perfect moment to resume our enigmatic nocturnal dance through the city's shadowed streets. Story 13. The very first time I encountered this phenomenon was on a tranquil autumn evening. Nestled in my study, engrossed in the pages of an ancient tome, a peculiar change in the natural light caught my attention. Filtering through the window, the fading sunlight seemed to dim in an unprecedented manner. Looking up, I beheld a sight beyond belief. The sky above my dwelling slowly cloaked itself in darkness, while the surroundings basked in the warm hues of twilight. The contrast, though subtle, was unmistakable. It was as though an invisible veil had chosen to linger solely over my roof. The air carried the fragrance of damp earth and fallen leaves, while a gentle breeze caused the lace curtains to sway, producing a mesmerizing melody that accompanied this mystical display of nature. In the days that followed, the phenomenon unfolded with regularity. Each evening, as the sun descended towards the horizon, that specific portion of the sky above my abode would adopt deeper shades compared to the rest of the expanse above. It appeared as if an artist had brushed strokes of gray and midnight blue across a square of the heavens, creating a surreal juxtaposition with the brilliant blue backdrop. I found myself entranced by this spectacle, seated in an antique velvet armchair near the window. The aged wooden floor softly creaked under my weight as I shifted to observe the progression of this celestial marvel. The room's atmosphere grew cooler, and a delicate layer of condensation adorned the window panes, crafting abstract patterns that danced with the shadows. One day, while lost in contemplation of this enigma, a new revelation dawned upon me. Amidst the darkened tapestry above, tiny points of light emerged and vanished in a rhythmic dance, akin to stars that chose to sparkle solely for my eyes. Their movements lacked a discernible pattern, yet exuded a hypnotic quality, almost akin to music. The silence within the house magnified their presence, while the pendulum clocks ticking in the hallway seemed to sync with their celestial waltz. As weeks turned into months, I began to notice subtle changes in how objects within my abode responded to this phenomenon. The aged mirrors reflected a softer, more embracing light. Shadows elongated in peculiar ways, forming shapes reminiscent of ancient symbols. The potted plants on the windowsill flourished during these moments of selective darkness, as if drawing sustenance from the twilight itself. One evening, while seated in my study, a gentle touch graced my shoulder, as if a breeze carried a caress. Startled, I turned around, finding no one there. The scent of ancient tomes and weathered wood permeated the room, intensifying as if time itself had stalled. The rhythmic sound of the clock, though still moving, felt distant, almost ethereal. I began chronicling these occurrences in a diary, meticulously detailing every fluctuation in the darkness's intensity and the accompanying phenomena. The pages filled with elaborate descriptions of the shifting light, the dancing shadows, and the almost imperceptible vibrations resonating within the air. My penmanship transformed during these moments, becoming more graceful and fluid, as if guided by an unseen hand. On the quietest nights, a melody seemed to emanate from that darkened slice of the sky. It defied verbal description, more of a sensation that stirred within me. It was as though the darkness held an ancient tune, a cosmic lullaby heard solely by my dwelling. With time, I embraced this mystery rather than fearing it. My abode had transformed into a nexus between the mundane and the profound, a realm where the ordinary intertwined with the extraordinary. Each evening, while the world outside adhered to its routines, I found myself enveloped in the embrace of these gentle shadows, in a dance of light and darkness crafted solely for my eyes. Night after night, I gazed at the sky darkening exclusively above my dwelling, cognizant that some mysteries need not be unraveled but simply experienced. My abode had evolved into a haven of marvel, a place where the commonplace and the extraordinary melded in a perpetual ballet of light and shadow, of known and unknown, of reality and reverie. Story 14, the night draped itself in a hushed stillness, cocooned in a blanket of fog that turned the streetlights into faint, distant stars. Nestled in my cherished armchair, I idly observed the shadows pirouette on the walls of my study, birthed by the flickering flame of a solitary candle on the side table. The wooden floor exhaled that familiar, aged aroma unique to well-loved homes, while the tranquil air was punctuated by the gentle ticking of the pendulum clock. It was in a moment of quiet reflection that my gaze snagged on something peculiar. Amidst the familiar shadows cavorting on the wall, there was one that danced to a different tune. While the rest swayed in harmony with the flame's choreography, this particular shadow moved with a purpose of its own, almost as if it were exploring the wall's surface. Initially, I dismissed it as a trick of my fatigued mind. Long hours spent working had a way of playing tricks on my eyes. Setting aside the book resting in my lap, I rose to investigate the anomaly. The shadow, sensing my scrutiny, shyly skittered towards the room's far corner. Drawing closer to the wall, I scrutinized the plastered surface intently. The uneven texture naturally birthed small shadows, but the one that had seized my attention was different, denser, more defined, as if crafted from substance rather than mere absence of light. Tentatively, I reached out to touch the wall at the spot where the shadow had halted. The surface was icy, chillingly colder than the rest of the wall. In the ensuing days, I began to notice other oddities. The shadow manifested at varying times, always in solitude, always when the light waned enough to birth shadows, yet not so dim as to engulf them entirely. Sometimes it materialized in the hallway, other times in the kitchen, yet always with that same inquisitive, almost bashful demeanor. One evening, while seated at my desk engrossed in writing, a presence brushed against me from behind. It wasn't the disquieting sensation of being watched. Rather, it felt akin to the silent observation of a cat. Turning slowly, I beheld the shadow etched on the closed study door. This time it held its ground, studying me as I studied it. It was then that I discerned a detail that had eluded me thus far. The shadow bore no source. Every shadow we encounter is cast by something: a person, an object, an animal. Yet this one existed in solitude, independent, as if it were a being unto itself. I commenced a silent dialogue with it, conveying thoughts not through words, but through gestures and motions. In response, it danced on the wall, shaping forms that almost resembled letters, vanishing before they could be deciphered. At times, a message seemed within reach. At others, they dissolved into meaningless swirls. With time, its presence became a familiar, almost soothing presence. On restless nights, I found myself seeking it out, anticipating its distinctive movements amidst the customary shadows. It was akin to having a silent companion, a sentinel of the nocturnal hours. The shadow's origins and true nature remained elusive. I delved into research, pored over ancient tomes, even consulted experts in the realm of paranormal phenomena, yet none could furnish a definitive explanation. Some posited a physical aberration, while others spoke of residual energy manifestations, but none captured the essence of its existence. Now, here I sit in my armchair, penning these words as the shadow sways gently in my periphery. It has become a part of my daily tapestry, a riddle I've embraced without comprehension. I often ponder if it too contemplates my essence, if I am as enigmatic to it as it is to me. The candle on the side table nears its end, and I know the shadow will soon dissolve into utter darkness, only to reappear when a fresh light births the space for its presence. And I shall remain here, awaiting it, in this silent communion between a man and a formless shadow. Story 15. The rain cascaded down upon the roof with a mesmerizing cadence, a symphony of nature that serenaded the stillness of the night. Nestled in my beloved armchair, cradling a cup of now-cold chamomile tea in my hands, I found myself drifting into a tranquil reverie as the raindrops played their lulling tune. Amidst this peaceful moment, a subtle shift in the night's melody caught my attention, a delicate, almost imperceptible sound that intertwined with the rain's gentle percussion. Faint footsteps that appeared to echo from the depths of the basement. Initially, I brushed it off as the usual settling of an old house, for every ancient abode possesses its unique voice, whispering through creaks and murmurs, especially on damp, rainy nights when the wood swells with moisture. However, there was a peculiar quality to these sounds, a rhythmic precision that mirrored human steps. Slowly rising from my seat, I placed the cup on the nearby table, feeling the warmth lingering on the wooden floor beneath my feet, a remnant of the day's fading heat. Approaching the basement door, a chill enveloped the air, seeping into my bones as I grasped the icy brass handle. The mechanism clicked as I turned it, the sound reverberating through the silent house. Descending the stairs cautiously, my own footsteps merged with the enigmatic ones that had beckoned me downward. The familiar scent of the basement, ancient wood, damp earth, and other indefinable essences grew stronger with each step. In the dimly lit basement, shadows danced on the walls with each flash of lightning, casting eerie shapes from the shelves laden with forgotten relics. Amidst this spectral dance, I noticed an anomaly, a series of footprints etched on the dusty floor, not ordinary imprints but delicate traces of moisture, as though someone with damp feet had circled the room's center. Intrigued, I drew closer to examine the enigmatic marks, pondering their origin. A movement in the darkest corner of the basement caught my eye, a slow, almost imperceptible motion where light dared not tread. Curiosity mingled with a strange familiarity, quickening my heartbeat not with fear but with a peculiar intrigue. As I approached the shadowed recess, the air grew colder, the echoes of footsteps reverberating around me, a a phantom ballet that seemed to envelop the entire space. It dawned on me that the footprints formed a deliberate pattern, a spiral leading towards the room's center. The freshest prints, still moist, hinted at recent activity, as if an unseen presence had just passed through. Time seemed to stand still as I watched these ephemeral tracks fade, dissolving into the frigid basement air, merging with the echoes of rain outside. Ascending the stairs once more, a profound tranquility washed over me, as though I had glimpsed a primordial ritual, an ancient dance hidden within the house's depths. That night, as I readied myself for slumber, the rain's melody transformed, echoing the rhythmic cadence of the mysterious footsteps below. Drifting into sleep, I pondered the possibility of their return, wondering if I would find the courage to face the enigma lurking in the shadows, unraveling the secrets of those ethereal footprints in the dust. Story 16, the winter twilight draped my bedroom walls in shades of purple, as a gentle rain tapped against the windows in a soothing rhythm. A flickering candle on my antique vanity, a cherished heirloom from my grandmother, cast dancing shadows that swirled in the mirror's reflection. The aroma of burning firewood mingled with the sweet scent of wax, enveloping the room in a warm and inviting embrace. Amidst this tranquil moment of reflection, a peculiar sight caught my eye. As I brushed my hair before the mirror, a tall, slender figure seemed to glide behind me, an ethereal presence moving with silent grace. I turned swiftly, only to find the room empty. Returning to the mirror, I dismissed the vision as a trick of light and shadow. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn to the world of reflections around me. The polished surface of the wooden table after a thorough cleaning, the window glass at dusk, even the tiny rear-view mirror in my car all seemed to capture fleeting glimpses of that mysterious figure. It was as though a parallel realm existed within these reflections, where a silent observer watched me with gentle curiosity. This figure, without distinct features, emanated a soft, silvery glow, at times hinting at a tender smile or a subtle gesture, as if reaching out to communicate. No fear gripped me, only a sense of familiarity that whispered of a long-hidden connection. One quiet evening, while immersed in a book in my beloved armchair, the figure in the window's reflection appeared sharper than ever before. Instead of vanishing upon scrutiny, it lingered, a presence felt rather than seen. In the hush of the room, a phantom rustle, like silk stirred by an unseen breeze, teased my senses. Drawn to the window, the figure mirrored my approach, movements fluid and graceful, as if dancing on air. It extended a hand towards me, and I, as if guided by an unseen force, reciprocated. In that moment, a revelation washed over me with each appearance. The figure brought a profound tranquility into the room. Sounds dulled, colors softened, time itself seemed to pause in reverence. It was as though this enigmatic presence carried with it a fragment of a serene reality, where dreams intertwined with the waking world. Seeking out reflections became a ritual, not born of fear or curiosity, but of a longing for that inner peace the figure bestowed. It appeared most often in moments of stillness, when worries and fears retreated, attuned to my deepest needs. As days turned into weeks, the figure in the reflections became a silent companion, a comforting presence in the ebb and flow of daily life. I refrained from unraveling its mystery, understanding that some enigmas are best left undisturbed. The unanswered questions held a beauty of their own, a delicate allure that surpassed any logical explanation. Even now, as the setting sun casts long shadows and the world falls into a hushed twilight, I pause to seek out those reflections. And in those quiet interludes, when time holds its breath, I glimpse it still a luminous figure dancing among the mirrors, carrying with it a profound calm and the gentle reminder that some mysteries are meant to be cherished. not unraveled. Story 17. The old grandfather clock in my study announced the arrival of midnight with its deep, familiar chime, each reverberation floating through the stillness of the room like gentle ripples on a pond. I was nestled in my worn leather armchair, a weathered book resting on my lap, the soft patter of rain against the window panes creating a soothing backdrop to the night's symphony. The ancient house around me emitted soft creaks and sighs, its aged wooden structure settling into the embrace of darkness. As I gazed towards the hallway door, illuminated by the warm glow of my reading lamp, I sensed a subtle shift in the air. Something about the door seemed different tonight, a change that eluded my grasp. Was it the brass handle catching the light in a new way, or perhaps the grain of the wood playing tricks on my eyes? Despite residing in this house for 15 long years, the door now appeared foreign, an enigma waiting to be unraveled. Setting aside my book and marking my page with a silk ribbon, I rose from my chair, the cool floor sending a chill through my slippers. With each step towards the door, the temperature dropped further, as though a sliver of winter had infiltrated that secluded corner of my home. My fingers brushed against the handle, unexpectedly warm against the backdrop of the night's chill. The door swung open effortlessly, revealing the unchanging hallway beyond the faded wallpaper, the worn carpet, the familiar photographs adorning the walls. Shaking my head at my own fanciful thoughts, I closed the door, dismissing the notion of mystery that had briefly captivated my mind. That night, my dreams were filled with doors appearing in the most improbable of places, each adorned with a warm brass handle, beckoning me to uncover their secrets. Morning arrived and I carried on with my daily routine, sparing only a passing glance towards the hallway door. It wasn't until the evening shadows began to stretch, painting the room in a dusky hue, that I noticed a subtle alteration. The door now bore a lighter hue, as if the passage of time had accelerated its aging process. The brass handle had acquired a delicate patina, a detail previously absent. Approaching the door with newfound curiosity, I examined it with a meticulous eye. The wood had transformed, its grain unfamiliar, the hinges now gleaming with a coppery sheen. Yet upon opening the door, the hallway remained unaltered, a steadfast constant amidst the door's ever-changing facade. Night after night, the door continued its silent metamorphosis, each transformation a subtle dance of time and mystery. Sometimes it aged, sometimes it renewed, but always it led to the same hallway, devoid of any tangible explanation for its transformations. Intrigued by this enigma, I began to keep a journal, capturing each alteration with intricate sketches and detailed descriptions. The door never revealed its secrets in my presence. It was in the depths of night, when the world slumbered and the house held its breath, that the door chose to change. One evening, fueled by curiosity, I resolved to observe the door throughout the night. I positioned my chair to face it directly, brewed a pot of strong tea, and embarked on my vigilant watch. The hours slipped by, the grandfather clock marking the passage of time with its steady rhythm. At 3:17 a.m., a brief flicker of the lights heralded a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. In that fleeting moment of darkness, I felt a whisper of change. When the light returned, the door stood transformed once more, the warm oak now a lustrous mahogany, intricate silver inlays adorning its surface like ethereal patterns in motion. Drawn to the door by an invisible force, I hesitated as my hand reached for the crystal handle, the air vibrating with a silent hum. And then the revelation struck me: the door bore no keyhole, a detail that had always been present in my recollection. Perplexed, I delved into my journal, searching for any mention of the keyhole, only to find it conspicuously absent. Had my memory deceived me, or was there a deeper mystery at play? The unanswered question lingered, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Now, as I sit in my study each evening, the door stands as a silent sentinel of change and uncertainty. Sometimes a glimpse of alternate hallways teases me from beneath the door, each offering a different reality. Yet upon opening it, my hallway remains unchanged, a constant in a sea of shifting possibilities. The door continues its nightly transformation, a ritual of metamorphosis that has become a part of my existence. I ponder whether it is the door that changes, or if it is my perception that shifts with each passing night. Perhaps both are true, or perhaps neither holds the key to the truth. As the grandfather clock tolls the midnight hour and the rain taps against the window, I find myself eagerly anticipating the unveiling of the door's latest incarnation, embracing the mysteries it harbors in the quiet hours before dawn. Story 18. The autumn breeze whispered through the rustling leaves, creating a soothing melody as I navigated the country road. The sky was ablaze with hues of orange and purple, painted by the setting sun. The GPS had long given up its guidance, but I felt strangely at ease. This familiar path, or so I thought, led me through rolling hills adorned with vineyards shedding their leaves. The scent of earth and fallen foliage wafted in through the cracked window, filling the car with a sense of tranquility. In moments like these, time seemed to stretch endlessly, allowing each breath to be savored. Following a weathered wooden sign, I turned right and found myself in uncharted territory. This road didn't align with my mental map of the area, sparking a flicker of curiosity within me. The shadows stretched leisurely, casting enchanting patterns amidst the trees that bordered the road. The asphalt beneath my wheels was impeccably smooth, too pristine for a neglected country lane. No bumps or cracks disrupted the seamless path that disappeared into the evening mist. Leaves twirled lazily in the air, as if reluctant to let go of time in this serene space. Proceeding cautiously, I observed the evolving landscape with a growing sense of wonder. The trees lining the road appeared ancient and twisted, unlike any I had encountered earlier. Their canopies intertwined above, forming a natural tunnel that filtered the dimming twilight. In the distance, faint lights flickered like misplaced fireflies, flitting between the tree trunks, ephemeral and elusive. The silence enveloped me, broken only by the faint hum of the engine and the rustle of leaves stirred by the wind. The road seemed to undergo a subtle transformation as I advanced, the boundaries blurred as if softened by an unseen hand. Shadows deepened, yet not menacingly so. Rather, reality seemed to be losing its sharp edges. Abruptly, a gleam caught my eye. An ancient brass mailbox stood by the roadside, its pristine condition defying time. Adorned with an intricate compass rose, it bore no name or address. As I reached out to touch it, a faint warmth emanated from the metal, despite the evening chill. The road continued its gentle curve, revealing increasingly peculiar details. Small stones at the roadside emitted a faint glow, as if imbued with their own light source. On closer inspection, the luminescence seemed to emanate from within the stones themselves. The sky above me bore an indescribable hue, a color unique to this forgotten realm. Stars timidly emerged, yet even they appeared different, as if plucked from another era or dimension. After what felt like hours, or perhaps mere minutes, I crested a hill and entered a circular clearing paved with ancient stones. At its center stood an old iron lamppost casting a warm, inviting glow. I halted the car and stepped out, greeted by an eerie stillness, as if time itself held its breath. From this vantage point, the distant city lights appeared distant, almost surreal, separated from this realm by an invisible veil. Surveying the scene, I noted the road behind me had transformed. No longer smooth asphalt, it now bore ancient stones worn by countless travelers. Yet I was certain it had been a modern road just moments earlier. Retrieving my map from the glove compartment, I scrutinized it under the lamppost's light. As suspected, this mysterious road eluded the confines of the map. It was as though I had traversed through a realm existing solely in dreams. As I folded the map, a gust of wind made it quiver in my grasp. For a fleeting moment, golden lines appeared on the paper, tracing a faintly glowing path before vanishing. I blinked, but the vision had dissolved. I lingered in that surreal space, enveloped in a profound sense of peace. Eventually, as I prepared to depart, I noticed the lamppost had extinguished silently. The path ahead lay cloaked in darkness, yet an unspoken assurance guided me homeward. Driving towards the city, I stole glances in the rearview mirror. The lamppost had rekindled, its light dwindling as I distanced myself. A golden radiance danced in the air, as if stardust had been scattered on the road unmarked by any map. In the days that ensued, I made countless attempts to rediscover that elusive road. I traversed the countryside for hours, exploring every fork and trail. Alas, the solitary lamppost and its luminous stones had vanished like a fading dream. The sole remnant of my journey was a faint golden trail on my aged map, visible only under a certain light, akin to a concealed secret awaiting rediscovery. Story 19. The heavy rain outside painted a hypnotic melody on the roof, setting the stage for another tranquil evening in my rustic country abode. As droplets cascaded down the window, they etched sinuous patterns that swayed in the soft candlelight, flickering to ward off encroaching darkness. A gentle breeze whispered through the garden foliage, rustling the leaves in a soothing lullaby. Nestled in my beloved armchair, cradling a warm cup of tea, I idly observed the steam twirl in delicate spirals into the air. The house murmured its usual symphony, the faint groans of the aging wood, the rhythmic ticking of the entryway clock, the gentle whistle of wind meandering through unseen crevices. All seemed ordinary, yet an indefinable unease crept into the tranquility of the evening. While sipping my tea, an anomaly caught my eye. The upstairs bedroom window, reflected in the hallway mirror, emitted an eerie glow as though a phantom candle flickered within. But I knew for certain that no light shone in that room. Setting down the cup on the side table, I rose leisurely and made my way towards the staircase. Each creak of the wooden steps, though familiar from years of residency, seemed to carry a different message that evening, as if the house itself sought to communicate with me. The air grew colder with each ascent, a thin veil of moisture clinging to the walls of the upper corridor. Upon reaching the bedroom door, I hesitated before turning the frosty brass handle. The door swung open with a soft squeak, unveiling the room cloaked in shadows. The window, the very one I had glimpsed in the mirror, was securely shut. Yet to my astonishment, the lock began to shift on its own, pushed by invisible hands. The window cracked open inch by inch, defying any logical explanation. The breeze that wafted in bore a nostalgic fragrance, a blend of dried flowers and ancient wood. Approaching cautiously, I watched raindrops pirouette into the room, forming intricate patterns on the wooden sill. To my amazement, the drops defied gravity, swirling in midair before alighting gently on the floor. As I marveled at this inexplicable display, movement on the glass caught my eye. Invisible fingers traced letters on the fogged surface, words materializing slowly yet too blurred to decipher. The curtain stirred softly, mimicking the tranquil breaths of a slumbering being, despite the absence of any wind. Moonlight filtered through rain-laden clouds, cast enchanting shadows on the walls, whispering silent tales. Extending a hand towards the window, I felt the cool outside air caress my fingertips. Just as I was about to make contact, the window closed softly, mirroring its earlier unhurried motion. The latch clicked with a delicate finality, dispersing the ancient scent that had enveloped the room. I stood transfixed, enveloped in a cocoon of stillness, as rain continued its steady descent outside. The room had reverted to its ordinary state, yet an intangible shift lingered in the air. It was as if the house had unveiled a glimpse of an alternate realm, visible only in those rare moments when reality dances with mystery, veiled by a gossamer-thin boundary. Since that fateful night, whenever rain graces the earth, I find myself ensconced in my armchair, gazing at the bedroom window's reflection in the hallway mirror. Sometimes it remains motionless, while on other occasions it opens gradually in a silent ritual that has woven itself into the fabric of my existence. The source of this enigma remains a mystery, yet I have embraced it as a sacred bond between myself and these ancient walls. On the quietest of nights, when the wind caresses the trees and rain whispers its gentle song, I sense a familiar presence, a silent watcher who shares this space with me, revealed through a window that opens of its own accord. Story 20. The park was draped in autumn fog, a delicate shroud of gray silk, as leaves waltzed lazily in the moist evening breeze. I strolled along the pebbled path, relishing the aroma of damp earth and the hushed crunch of my steps. Dim streetlights cast soft halos through the mist, barely illuminating the way ahead. And there it was, a dark coat, neatly folded on a weathered wooden bench. The park was deserted, and the garment appeared to have been placed with meticulous care, as if by a deliberate hand. I approached cautiously, watching as the woolen fabric absorbed the mist's droplets. The coat exuded elegance, crafted with precision, adorned with faintly glimmering mother-of-pearl buttons. It retained a warmth, as though its wearer had just shed it. This detail stirred not fear, but rather a deep curiosity within me. I checked the pockets, hoping for a clue to the owner's identity, but they held only a solitary bus ticket from 1985. Time seemed to slow as I examined this relic of days gone by. The ticket, aged and yellowed, remained remarkably intact, as if shielded from the passage of time. Taking a seat beside the coat, I let my mind drift as the fog thickened around me. A subtle scent of lavender and pipe tobacco wafted from the fabric, conjuring memories of bygone eras, of faded photographs. Upon closer inspection, I noticed faded golden thread initials inside. JM. The park's silence was broken by a distant melody, vintage music, perhaps from a distant gramophone, echoing like a half-remembered dream. Rising from the bench, I sought the source of the music, but it seemed to drift from all directions and none. When I turned back to the coat, I saw it had shifted slightly, as if moved while I was distracted by the music. The fold was no longer pristine, and a button caught the light in a different manner, yet I knew I was alone in the park. Time meandered strangely, the fog enveloping everything in its embrace. Shadows danced among fallen leaves cast by the streetlights, while the music ebbed in the air. I pondered the identity of JM, musing on why they had left their coat on that bench. Perhaps a professor seeking solace after lectures, a musician finding inspiration, or someone releasing a piece of their past. Lost in these thoughts, I felt a gentle touch on my shoulder like a breeze's caress. I turned, but there was only swirling fog. The coat appeared aged now, as if time had hastened for it alone, fading the fabric further. Respecting its mystery, I left it undisturbed and walked away. As I departed, the music momentarily intensified, a waltz unfamiliar yet oddly familiar. The following morning, driven by curiosity, I returned to the park. The bench stood empty, but a fresh bus ticket, dated that day, lay on the dew-kissed wood. Even now, on misty evenings, passing by the bench, I hear that distant melody and catch the scent of lavender and tobacco. Sometimes, as the streetlights flicker in the mist, I glimpse the silhouette of an elegant figure strolling away in the park. Yet upon closer inspection, only the fluttering shadows of leaves in the evening breeze remain. Story 21. The rain softly tapped against the windows of my quaint country home, crafting a soothing melody that intertwined with the gentle creaks of the wooden floor beneath my feet. It was a tranquil autumn evening when the line between what is real and what is imagined felt more delicate than ever. The tree branches swayed in the night, casting ever-shifting shadows on the walls of the hallway painted in a soft cream hue, visible through the misty panes. Nestled in my beloved armchair, holding a cup of now-cooled chamomile tea, I absent-mindedly watched as the light from the floor lamp painted a golden circle on the ground. There lingered an indiscernible difference that night, a subtle yet insistent feeling that eluded my grasp. It could have been the thickness of the air or the profound silence of the house that seemed almost tangible. Rising slowly, I was compelled by a flicker caught in my peripheral vision. The corridor leading to the bedrooms appeared elongated, as if stretching beyond its usual confines. The shadows in the corners deepened, taking on a life of their own. Halting at the threshold of the living room, I peered into the darkness that thickened as it neared the end of the hallway. The temperature seemed to drop gradually as I ventured forth. The floor beneath my feet emitted unfamiliar sounds, as though I trod upon an alien surface. The ancestral portraits adorning the walls seemed to regard me with a new intensity, their familiar faces slightly altered. Midway down the hallway, I paused. A distinct aroma caught my senses, a blend of aged books and damp wood foreign to my home. Turning towards the window to my right, rain had etched intricate patterns on the glass, designs following a cryptic yet orderly scheme. And then I saw it. A shadow, darker than the rest, glided with unnatural elegance along the opposite wall. It bore no visible source, possessing a solidity akin to condensed mist. Moving with a deliberate grace, it seemed almost aware of my presence. My breath deepened as I observed, not fear but a curious sense of recognition enveloping me. The shadow paused by the guest room door, assuming a vaguely humanoid form. Taking a step closer, it appeared to react, wavering slightly. The rain's patter transformed into a constant whisper, as if conveying a message. I strained to listen, perceiving momentarily words in an unfamiliar yet strangely understandable tongue. The air grew colder, though not unwelcoming a cool embrace on a warm summer evening. The shadow resumed its motion, gliding towards me in a slow, rhythmic dance. I stood transfixed as it drew nearer until it halted a few steps away. Amidst the house's silence, my heartbeat echoed, steady and calm. The shadow inclined slightly, a silent greeting. Acting on an inexplicable impulse, I raised my hand. Mirroring my gesture, the shadow seemed to manifest a hand, ethereal yet tangible. Though no physical contact was made, a warmth lingered where our hands nearly met. With graceful fluidity, the shadow began to dissipate, dispersing like smoke carried by an unseen breeze, leaving behind a faint scent of jasmine and a profound tranquility. I remained in the hallway, time seeming to stand still as the rain's song faded. Returning to the living room, I found my tea still warm, as if time itself had paused during our encounter. Since that evening on rainy nights, I tread the hallway with heightened awareness, watching for glimpses of that familiar form dancing just beyond my sight. The identity of the shadow remains a mystery, yet its presence instilled not fear but a recognition of inexplicable wonders. The hallway now holds its secret, and on quiet nights when rain taps against the windows, I await with a blend of curiosity and peace for another encounter with the dancing shadow beyond the corridor. Story 22. In the autumn garden, a delicate mist enveloped the world, veiling the landscape in a shroud of tranquility. As I gathered the fallen leaves beneath the hushed morning sky, the crisp air tenderly kissed my cheeks, carrying whispers of the earth's musky embrace and the lingering fragrance of chrysanthemums that bloomed in my care not long ago. A serene quietude settled over the garden, broken only by the soft rustle of dried leaves beneath my feet and the distant serenade of an early bird welcoming the dawn. It was amidst this ethereal stillness that my eyes caught a glimmer, a faint shimmering hidden among the fallen foliage. Bending down, I brushed aside the dampened leaves, revealing a treasure nestled within nature's embrace, an antique necklace of exquisite craftsmanship. The pendant, an oval adorned with intricate floral motifs, cradled a small blue gem that seemed to hold captive the essence of sunlight in its depths. Intrigued, I lifted the necklace, feeling its weightless elegance and the cool touch of its metal against my skin. It was a piece unknown to me, a mystery in a solitary life lived within these walls for decades. The blue gem, a beacon of luminescence, seemed to dance with its own inner light, casting a spell of enchantment. That night, after tenderly cleansing the necklace, I placed it by my bedside, where it caught the moon's gentle glow filtering through the window, casting playful shadows upon the walls as I drifted into slumber. Throughout the night, I stirred from dreams by a distant melody, a haunting refrain that lingered on the edges of my consciousness, a music box's melancholic tune that wove through the stillness, vanishing as I tried to grasp its ethereal notes. With the morning light, I found the necklace had shifted on the nightstand, as though moved by unseen hands. The once radiant blue gem now held a muted gleam, yet as I held it, a subtle warmth pulsed from its metal, a contrast to its previous chill. Driven by curiosity, I delved into the necklace's origins, only to uncover subtle shifts within the house's embrace. Objects rearranged themselves overnight, photographs tilted on their perches, and the elusive melody grew clearer, a ghostly echo of bygone days. One twilight, as I sat ensconced in my armchair with the necklace nearby, I heard the soft patter of footsteps from above, delicate as a child's tiptoeing gait. Ascending the stairs with bated breath, I found no soul but stumbled upon a forgotten guest room. Within, a wooden box adorned with familiar floral motifs cradled a photograph of a young woman donning an identical necklace, its back inscribed with a fading date and a poignant sentiment, to remember the happy days in the garden. From that night forth, the melody of the music box grew more frequent, a soothing presence that lulled the house to sleep with its tender serenade. And in the quietest hours, as autumn whispered through the trees, a spectral figure seemed to dance on the edge of memory, a phantom from a past unknown. The enigma of the woman in the photograph and the necklace's journey to my garden eluded my grasp, yet I embraced their mystery as one welcomes the ebb and flow of seasons and time's inexorable passage. The necklace remains upon my nightstand, a silent sentinel, and on nights of deepest stillness, beneath the full moon's gaze and the wind's gentle sigh, echoes of laughter and music blend a chorus of joyous days lost to the annals of time. Story 23. The autumn wind whispered through the trees, a gentle melody harmonizing with the hushed murmurs of the crowd enveloping me. Seated on my cherished bench in the park, I observed the ebb and flow of people meandering along the paved pathways. The air held a crispness, carrying the fragrance of moist earth and damp wood. A book lay in my hands, yet my focus was drawn to a subtle, almost imperceptible feeling that had lingered with me for days. It began discreetly, a mere whisper of a sensation. One morning, on my way to work, a tingling crept along my neck as though unseen eyes were fixed upon me. I glanced back, finding only the usual stream of commuters rushing towards their destinations. But in the days that followed, that feeling grew more insistent, more tangible. During lunch breaks, amidst grocery runs, even in the solace of my favorite coffee haunt. People continued to drift past my bench, some solitary, others in pairs. A woman in a crimson coat paused to check her phone. An elderly gentleman ambled by with a polished wooden cane. Yet amidst the familiar faces, I sensed a subtle shift, something elusive, indefinable. Closing my book, I rose and decided to wander. As the sky painted itself in amber hues and the first streetlights flickered to life, I strolled along the main thoroughfare, my footsteps a gentle cadence on the gravel. The sensation persisted, an unseen presence trailing at a fixed distance. Halting before a shop window, feigning interest in the wares displayed, I surreptitiously watched the passerby's reflections. It was then I spied something peculiar, a face in the throng, a constant amidst the flux. Indistinct, slipping between figures with effortless grace. Resuming my journey, now more vigilant, I turned down side streets, one after another. The crowd thinned, yet the presence lingered. Seating myself on a bench in a serene square, encircled by ancient edifices aglow with lamplight, the night air chilled and stars winked into view. It dawned on me disconcertingly that it wasn't a single gaze but many, a collective, as if a silent ballet orchestrated by unseen hands. Some visages recurred, a young woman in azure scarf, a bespectacled middle-aged man, a lad with a backpack. Rising slowly, I made my way home, bearing the weight of those unseen gazes. The streets now deserted, the sensation not abating, but rather intensifying in the nocturnal stillness. Upon reaching my apartment, I settled by the window, observing the world below. Figures passed, pausing fleetingly or continuing their journey. I pondered how many were merely traversing and how many were part of this enigmatic choreography, with me unwittingly at its epicenter. Most unsettling was their normalcy, blending seamlessly with the masses. As the city lights flickered to life, I contemplated the essence of this silent surveillance. Who were they? What drove their watchful gaze? And above all, why me? Unanswered queries hung in the air as night unfurled its dark cloak over the cityscape. Since then, I've acclimated to this newfound awareness. At times, I seek to discern my observers, while others I feign ignorance. Yet they persist, like shadows flitting at the edges of my existence. Amidst the hush of night, as I peer from my window at the emptying streets, I wonder if they, too, contemplate me from their hidden abodes, poised for another day in this enigmatic waltz of gazes and apparitions. Story 24. The rain whispered its gentle song against the windows of the old establishment, weaving a soothing melody with the soft clinking of cups and the murmurs of the few lingering patrons. Seated at the bar, I observed the play of dim lights pirouetting on the polished surface of the dark wood. Jack, the bartender, moved with a deliberate grace as he polished glasses, his motions almost hypnotic in their rhythm. That night a subtle shift had settled in his gaze, a depth I had never before glimpsed in my daily visits. Behind his dark eyes, a world of unspoken thoughts seemed to swirl, even as he prepared my customary lavender tea. His hands, typically steady, betrayed a faint tremor when he set the cup before me. The delicate fragrance of lavender waltzed through the air, mingling with the scent of coffee and the aged wood that infused the atmosphere. Jack's eyes darted intermittently towards a solitary figure tucked away in the farthest corner of the bar, an enigmatic presence blending into the shadows as if part of the very furniture. With measured steps, Jack drew near to replenish my cup, a controlled calm masking an underlying tension in his voice when he inquired if I desired anything more. It was then that my gaze caught a disquieting detail. A small, crimson stain marred the cuff of his otherwise pristine white shirt, scarcely discernible in the dimness. As the hours ebbed away, the rain continued its steady lullaby, ushering the other patrons out one by one until only the mysterious figure remained, an inscrutable sentinel in the corner, as if awaiting an unseen cue. Jack busied himself with meticulous precision, rearranging the counter with a meticulousness that bordered on obsession, aligning bottles and dusting already spotless surfaces. His movements betrayed a mounting disquiet, while the relentless ticking of the pendulum clock marked the passage of time with unwavering insistence. Amidst the quietude, I spied a weathered notebook concealed beneath the counter amid the array of bottles. Its yellowed pages bore minuscule methodical script, a testament to a meticulous chronicler. Names, dates, and places flowed in orderly succession, but it was the final entries that captured my attention, a series of cryptic notations, numbers devoid of apparent logic, accompanied by intricate symbols etched with painstaking care. The soft tread of footsteps drew my gaze upwards. The enigmatic figure had at last stirred from their secluded table, making their way towards the exit. A fleeting exchange of glances transpired between them and Jack as they traversed the bar, laden with unspoken tension. A barely perceptible nod from the bartender, and the stranger vanished into the rain-soaked night. Returning to his tasks, Jack bore a newfound weight in his demeanor. His typically sure hands trembled faintly as he stowed away the glassware, his gaze adrift in a sea of distant recollections, as if grappling with a memory both cherished and burdensome. Just as I readied myself to depart, Jack detained me with a gentle gesture. "You know," he began in a hushed tone, "there are things witnessed and overheard by a bartender that should linger shrouded in the hush of these walls. Yet at times the burden of these concealed truths grows too weighty to bear alone." He paused, as if measuring the gravity of his forthcoming words. I turned to face him, the flickering lamplight casting ephemeral shadows upon his wearied countenance. The notebook lay partially concealed among the bottles, a silent sentinel of untold mysteries. A wan smile graced Jack's lips, failing to reach the depths of his eyes. "Return tomorrow," he murmured. "Perhaps I shall unveil a tale, or perhaps not." Stepping into the night's embrace, the rain persisted in its gentle descent. Through the bar's window, I observed Jack resume his meticulous rituals, a silent sentinel amidst the quietude. Yet now I knew that beneath those daily gestures lay a wellspring of enigma, a mystery destined to elude complete comprehension. As I ventured forth into the veiled night, the lights of the establishment dimmed behind me, succumbing to the shroud of darkness that cloaked the secrets harbored within those walls. I pondered the countless narratives concealed beneath bar counters, the unseen custodians of veiled truths like Jack. However, the true extent of such enigmas eluded me, lost amidst the soothing symphony of rain that persisted in its steadfast descent, enveloping the starless night in its embrace. Story 25. The pitter-patter of raindrops on the roof of the ancestral home created a hypnotic symphony as I sifted through the final remnants of my grandmother's legacy. Nostalgia lingered in the air, mingling with the aroma of aged wood and swirling dust illuminated by the fading sunlight seeping through the cream drapes. Each item I handled seemed to whisper tales of bygone eras, painting vivid memories with a gentle touch. And there, nestled in the last box, lay a weathered photo album bound in dark leather. Despite its worn corners, the album exuded a softness only time could bestow. I reverently placed it on the antique oak table in the living room, its pages exuding a faint scent of must and antiquity. Black and white photographs adorned the album, chronicling moments of familial joy, weddings, birthdays, carefree summer days. A smile graced my lips as I recognized the faces of my ancestors in their youthful splendor, tracing resemblances through generations. The rustle of pages blended harmoniously with the rain's gentle cadence on the window panes. My journey through the snapshots halted at a particular scene captured in a garden, a summer luncheon frozen in time. Amidst the familiar faces sat my grandmother, radiant in her floral attire, surrounded by her siblings. Sunlight bathed their joyful countenances, casting delicate shadows. Yet one figure stood apart, veiled in mystery. Clad in a light-hued dress that grazed her ankles, her features obscured by the wide brim of a hat, she seemed an enigma. Intrigued, I lifted the photograph from its sleeve for a closer inspection. On the verso, my grandmother's elegant script bore a solitary inscription, Summer 1956. No further clues were offered as to the identity of the enigmatic woman. As I scrutinized the image, a chill breeze swept through the room, causing the curtains to dance. Twilight descended, cloaking the room in uncertainty. Flicking on the antique table lamp bathed the space in a warm, gentle glow. And there, beneath the lamplight, a disquieting revelation emerged. The mysterious figure's shadow defied logic, casting in an unnatural direction divergent from the family's shadows. A subtle tremor ran down my spine, recalling a clandestine conversation overheard between my mother and aunt regarding a transient visitor who had vanished without a trace, her identity a mystery. The rain's rhythm intensified, lulling me into a trance as the photograph seemingly came alive, the enigmatic woman growing sharper while the surroundings blurred. It was as if she sought to convey a message, a secret encoded in the frozen moment. Tilting the picture, I discerned faint markings in the corner, almost imperceptible. Straining under the light, the words materialized, "She always sees." Returning the photograph to its rightful place, I found myself unable to shut the album, drawn to the untold secrets it harbored. How many hidden narratives lay within these walls, how many enigmas captured in sepia tones. Night descended, its silence enveloping the house in a tranquil embrace. Seated by the window in an armchair, the album resting on my lap, I delved into contemplation. Who was she, this mysterious woman? What had she witnessed, and did her gaze still linger on unseen? Leaving the album open on the table, I retired for the night, stealing a final glance from the threshold. For a fleeting moment, bathed in the lamp's flickering glow, it seemed as though the figure had shifted, as if she turned to meet my gaze. Or was it merely a trick of light, a mystery destined to linger within the faded pages of a time-worn album? Story 26. The November breeze gently brushed the withered leaves along the pathway as I gazed at the silhouette of the forsaken mansion contrasting against the somber sky. Known as the house that was never truly inhabited, though history whispered a different tale, there was a dweller once, a distant memory fading into obscurity. Approaching the weathered gate, the touch of the cold wrought iron sent shivers down my spine. The air carried a scent of moss and damp stone, wrapping the neglected garden in a cloak of untamed wildness, vines creeping up the weathered walls. Yet, amidst the overgrowth, the mansion exuded a forlorn elegance that refused to fade. In my role as a real estate agent, I was tasked with assessing the property, owned by an elderly man residing afar, eager to part ways with the estate he had never visited, an inheritance from a long-lost relative. As I meandered through the unkempt garden, a peculiar sight caught my eye. Amidst the weeds, faint trails seemed freshly fashioned, hinting at a mysterious visitor's presence. But who could it be? The neighbors adamantly claimed no soul dared to trespass on the property. The entrance yielded with a soft groan, revealing an interior cloaked in a bluish dusk seeping through the sealed shutters. The air hung heavy with dust and the scent of aged timber, the floor whispering tales of bygone footsteps as I traversed the grand salon. Ghostly shapes draped in yellowed sheets adorned the furniture, their forms dancing in the dim light. Enormous veiled mirrors on the walls played tricks with the scarce light, casting illusions of movement in their clouded reflections. Ascending the creaking stairs, my hand clutched the polished wooden railing worn smooth by time and touch. The corridor on the upper floor harbored a row of closed doors, each revealing empty chambers save for a few shrouded pieces of furniture. It was in the final room that a sense of unease crept upon me. a feminine boudoir veiled in a thin layer of dust, yet disturbed as if caressed by a recent visitor's hand. A silver brush lay on the dresser, dark strands of fresh hair beside it, untouched by time's embrace. The immaculately made bed bore a faint indentation, as though someone had lingered there moments ago. Just as I prepared to depart, a fleeting movement in the mirror caught my eye, a specter of a woman seated on the bed, a mere flicker of existence. Startled, I turned to find the room devoid of life, yet the sensation of a presence lingered. Descending the stairs hastier than I ascended, the salon now bathed in shifting shadows as daylight waned. The mirrors seemed to follow my every move as I made my way to the exit. And then a whisper, a soft hum, a melody ancient and sorrowful, echoed from somewhere above. Pausing with a hand on the doorknob, I strained to discern reality from illusion. Was it the wind through the shutters or a figment of my imagination? Exiting swiftly, the garden lay silent, the wind now a mere murmur. Glancing back at the mansion, I caught a glimpse of a pale glow behind an upstairs window, a fleeting apparition vanishing into the shadows. In the days that followed, I meticulously crafted my report on the property, detailing its state, necessary renovations, and potential value. Omitting the hair on the dresser and the haunting melody, I penned a cryptic note. The property possesses a unique allure that may captivate a select clientele. The mansion lingered on the market, a lonely sentinel awaiting a new owner. Occasionally pausing by the rusty gate, I fancied seeing a feminine figure moving through the upper chambers, as if trapped in a timeless dance. Perhaps the enigma of the never-inhabited house lay not in its vacancy, but in the eternal presence of an unseen guest, forever bound to its shadowed halls. Story 27, the soft patter of November rain against the attic windows of Grandma Rose created a tranquil rhythm that always brought me a sense of calm. Returning to her attic after many years, now that she had departed, I embarked on the task of sorting through her belongings. The scent of aged wood and weathered books lingered in the air, while the fading light of twilight seeped through the half-opened shutters, casting playful shadows upon the vintage wallpaper. Tucked away in a corner beneath a thin layer of dust, I discovered Grandma's cherished brass record player, gleaming like a polished mirror. An artifact of a bygone era, adorned with intricate floral designs on its mechanical arm and a flawlessly preserved turntable. Beside it, a collection of vinyl records neatly encased in time-worn cardboard sleeves. As I sifted through the records, my fingers paused on a particular one. Its cover was a pure white expanse, devoid of any title or author, except for a delicate golden border that shimmered in the muted light. Though unfamiliar, I knew every record in Grandma Rose's collection by heart. Intrigued, I resolved to play it. The record player hummed faintly as it sprung to life. With care, I positioned the mysterious record on the turntable and lowered the arm. Initially, only the familiar crackle of vinyl filled the room before the music began. A melody unknown to my ears, a piano waltz, yet there was an uncanny quality to the way the notes intertwined. It felt as though the music subtly transformed with each rotation of the record, rearranging itself into new harmonies. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the enigmatic composition. A hint of jasmine, Grandma Rose's beloved flower, seemed to waft through the air, a surreal sensation considering the wintry season. Upon opening my eyes, I observed the shadows in the room moving in an unconventional manner, no longer in sync with the natural fading light, but swaying to the cadence of the mysterious melody. Before me on the wall, a figure's shadow danced distinctly, despite my solitude. The waltz persisted, and amidst the piano notes, I detected a familiar sound, a soft laughter I recognized immediately. It was Grandma Rose's laughter, vivid and clear as in my fondest memories. A thrill coursed through me, not of fear, but of a peculiar blend of nostalgia and awe. Rising from the armchair, I approached the window. In the glass's reflection, the room behind me was mirrored, yet for an instant I glimpsed Grandma Rose in her prime, resplendent in her favorite dance attire, twirling gracefully in the attic center. When I turned around, the room was empty as expected. The record continued its ethereal tune until its final note faded into silence. The atmosphere shifted, the room felt warmer, more vibrant, as if that fleeting musical interlude had stirred dormant memories within the house's very walls. That night, as I placed the enigmatic record back into its white sleeve, I noticed a detail I previously overlooked. Inscribed in Grandma Rose's elegant script along the inner edge was a date, her wedding day. Beneath it, in nearly imperceptible letters, a mantra: music is the key to our most cherished memories. Since then, whenever I revisit the attic, I search for that particular record. Sometimes it reveals itself easily, other times it hides among the other vinyls. Each time I play it, the melody varies subtly, as if it harbors infinite renditions of the same memory. I've pondered whether it was a special gift from Grandma Rose or something more enigmatic. One thing remains certain. On those rainy evenings when the record player spins that mysterious melody, the attic becomes infused with a delicate enchantment, blurring the line between past and present, reality and recollection, akin to the fragile surface of an aged photograph. Perhaps in those fleeting moments, Grandma Rose dances on, timeless and jubilant, in an eternal waltz. Story 28. The night had enveloped the ancient house in a velvety shroud of quietness, broken only by the gentle patter of autumn rain on the window panes. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a piping hot cup of tea in my hands, my gaze wandered absent-mindedly to the painting hanging on the wall across from me. This painting, an heirloom from my grandmother, depicted a sunset over a woodland landscape. Though not of great worth, it never failed to captivate me with its melancholic tranquility. As the golden light from the floor lamp cast dancing shadows around the room, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The painting appeared slightly askew to the right, a deviation I was certain had not been there before. Rising slowly, I set down my cup on the nearby table. Each step I took on the creaking wooden floor brought me closer to the wall. With gentle hands, I straightened the painting, feeling the aged roughness of the frame beneath my fingertips. Returning to my seat, I resumed my interrupted reading, lulled by the warmth of the tea and the soothing cadence of the rain outside. After a few moments, I glanced up to find the painting tilted once more, this time to the left. A subtle chill ran down my spine as I struggled to dismiss it as mere fatigue or a trick of light. Standing up again, I approached the painting more cautiously. This time, a new revelation awaited me. The colors of the sunset appeared more vibrant, almost pulsating, while the tree shadows seemed elongated. Tracing my trembling fingers over the canvas, I noticed a warmth emanating from it, as if it had absorbed the room's heat, yet the paint seemed to shimmer in an unfamiliar way. In the days that followed, my attention was drawn ever more to the painting. Each time I entered the room, it seemed to have shifted slightly. Sometimes the change was subtle, other times more pronounced. Not only did its tilt vary, but the very details within the painting seemed to subtly alter. The density of the trees, the shapes of the clouds, all seemed to undergo a metamorphosis. Compelled, I began documenting these changes with morning and evening photographs, meticulously comparing them. The discrepancies, though slight, were undeniable. Within the painted forest, new elements emerged and vanished. A hidden nest, a secluded glade, a faint trail previously unseen. The sunset itself seemed to progress imperceptibly, as if time within the painting flowed to a different rhythm. One tranquil evening, seated in my usual armchair, a movement caught my peripheral vision. The painting was shifting on its own, almost imperceptibly. Curiosity mingled with a surreal calm as I observed the fluid motion, as if an unseen hand caressed it. Drawn to it, I approached without hesitation. The canvas seemed to hum under my gaze, and in the reflection of the protective glass, a fleeting image flickered before me. The blurred profile of my grandmother, like a faded memory, appeared to smile as she corrected the painting's position. Since that moment, I've embraced these subtle changes as part of the house's enchantment. Each night before retiring, I spend a few moments studying the painting, seeking out its new mysteries. Perhaps it's my grandmother's way of signaling her presence, a silent guardian through this enigmatic canvas that lives and breathes. I've kept this tale close to my heart, sharing it with none, cherishing the sweet enigma. The painting still shifts, but now less frequently, as if it has found a delicate balance between revealing itself and preserving its secret. And so every evening I settle into my armchair with a steaming cup of tea, the rain tapping at the windows, observing the painting that dances its own silent ballet, a dialogue understood only by us two. Story 29. In the heart of our neighborhood, autumn nights carry a sense of enchantment. The air is crisp with the fragrance of fallen leaves, and the gentle echo of footsteps on the damp pavement creates a soothing rhythm. Lately, on my evening strolls home from work, I've been captivated by an unusual occurrence. It revolves around a particular streetlight at the intersection of Maple Street and Rose Avenue. Unlike its counterparts that steadfastly bathe the sidewalk in a warm yellow glow, this streetlight has a mysterious behavior. As I draw near, its light starts to wane, as though concealing a secret from my sight. At first, I dismissed it as a mere malfunction, a neglected relic in need of repair. But as the nights passed, I couldn't ignore the peculiar pattern. The light dimmed only in my presence. Observing others pass beneath it revealed no change in its luminosity. Intrigued, I decided to experiment. Standing 60 feet away against the weathered façade of the Art Deco building, I scrutinized the streetlight. Its beam cast elongated shadows and made dew-kissed grass twinkle in the nearby garden. With each step closer, the light faltered slightly, as if hesitating. By the time I stood 15 feet away, it had dwindled to a faint glimmer, barely illuminating the surroundings. Underneath its subdued radiance, a hushed stillness enveloped me, as if the very essence of night held its breath. Peering up at the streetlight's glass, I discerned peculiar markings etched upon it in the dimness. Struggling to make sense of the pattern, I reached for my phone to shed more light. Yet just as I activated the flashlight, a sudden gust rustled the tree leaves, and I sensed a subtle movement within the glass enclosure. In the ensuing days, I altered my route to pass beneath that enigmatic streetlight. The ritual repeated itself each time, the light dimming in my approach, the silence deepening, the sensation of unseen eyes watching from above. Gradually, I noticed more nuances. At its dimmest, the light displayed subtle shifts in color, almost as if conveying a message through imperceptible variations. One moonlit night, within the circle of twilight beneath the streetlight, I caught a peculiar sound, a faint metallic hum, laced with a melodic rhythm emanating from within the pole. Placing my hand on the cool metal, I felt the vibrations resonating through my palm, as if the streetlight sought to communicate. Compelled to unravel the mystery, I meticulously documented each encounter. I observed that the dimming intensity correlated with lunar phases, nearly extinguishing during the new moon and retaining a steadier glow under the full moon. Moreover, the light unfailingly returned to its full brightness after my passage in precisely 23 seconds, a consistent, unexplained phenomenon. Yet what intrigued me most was the subtle influence the streetlight exerted on my routines. I found myself slowing down, engaging in a silent communion as I neared it. Occasionally, I lingered beneath its subdued glow, immobile in the twilight, listening to the almost imperceptible hum that seemed to narrate tales of bygone eras. I refrained from seeking a rational explanation, content in the allure of the mystery. Each night as I journeyed homeward, I anticipated the streetlight's quiet vigil, anticipating our shared moment in the dimness. And so night after night, I partake in the enigmatic dance with the streetlight that dims at my approach. Whether an electrical anomaly, a cosmic enigma, or something beyond comprehension, I embrace the notion that within this corner of the city, a clandestine enigma chooses to reveal itself solely to me. In that fleeting interlude of darkness, when the world recedes and shadows reign, I feel connected to a grander scheme, a mystery, unfolding through the silent dialogue of light and shadow. Story 30, the gentle evening breeze whispered through the open window, carrying the delicate fragrance of night-blooming flowers from the garden. Nestled in the embrace of my favorite armchair, I found myself entranced by the graceful play of shadows upon the walls of the living room, cast by the flickering candlelight. Beside me on the small table rested my trusty old Polaroid camera, cherished heirloom from my grandmother, a relic of bygone days. Though it had been ages since I last wielded its magic, a mysterious urge compelled me to pick it up on that particular night. The familiar weight of the camera felt like a comforting embrace in the dim glow of the room. My fingers traced the well-worn contours, instinctively finding their place on the shutter button, an action repeated countless times in the past. Without conscious thought, I directed the lens toward the shadowed recesses of the room and clicked. The flash momentarily illuminated the darkness, followed by the familiar mechanical hum as the image slowly materialized on the photograph. As the colors bloomed on the blank canvas, a peculiar anomaly caught my eye. Nestled in the corner of the captured frame, a ghostly figure materialized. Its form was indistinct, ethereal, hovering like a wisp of smoke taking on human semblance. Curiosity piqued. I glanced towards the corner of the room, only to find emptiness staring back at me. Intrigued by the enigma, I snapped another photo in the same direction. This time the figure appeared more defined, as though it had shifted closer to the lens. A vague outline of a face emerged, features blurred yet hinting at a presence. A subtle chill traced down my spine, not born of fear, but of a reverential intrigue. Compelled by an unseen force, I continued capturing images, each unveiling a clearer visage of the mysterious figure. It was as if each click of the shutter allowed the ephemeral being to solidify, bridging the gap between realms. The ghostly contours gradually sharpened, revealing a silhouette reminiscent of a bygone era, a ghostly echo of the 1940s. A profound silence descended upon the room, thick and tangible. The air grew heavy with an unseen presence, the candle flame flickering in obedience to some unseen force. Undeterred, I persisted, each photograph a silent dialogue between the seen and unseen. In the final picture of that fateful evening, the figure loomed so close it almost engulfed the entire frame. The woman's gentle smile was unmistakable, her eyes seeming to meet mine through the glossy sheen of the Polaroid. A sense of familiarity tugged at my memories, stirring echoes of childhood long forgotten. A tremor in my hands prompted a search through an old photo album, where I unearthed a portrait of my grandmother in her youth captured by the very same Polaroid. The mirrored smile in the photograph mirrored the one captured in the final image I had taken. Arranging the photos in chronological order, a silent narrative unfolded, a tale of connection woven through the lens of an ancient camera. I never dared to replicate the experiment, allowing the Polaroid to rest upon its shelf once more. But on quiet evenings, when the light took on a golden hue reminiscent of sunset, I would find myself drawn back to the photographs. Sometimes, in the subtle shifting of the smile, it felt as though my grandmother sought to convey a message from beyond the veil. In those fleeting moments, the boundary between memory and reality blurred, akin to the delicate surface of a freshly developed Polaroid, a silent testament to the enduring power of connection across worlds. Story 31. The night was draped in a profound quiet, broken only by a distant, ethereal melody. Nestled in my cherished armchair, a soft woolen blanket draped over my knees, and a forgotten cup of chamomile tea resting on the side table beside me, I lifted my gaze from the book cradled in my hands. The delicate notes pirouetted through the air like snowflakes, almost imperceptible yet undeniably present. I recognized the sound of piano, its composition unfamiliar yet strangely reminiscent, like a whisper of a long-lost dream. The house lay cloaked in darkness, save for the gentle glow of a small lamp beside the armchair, casting a warm circle of light around me. Shadows waltzed across the walls in harmony with the mysterious music. Slowly I stood, allowing the blanket to cascade to the floor with a hushed murmur. Each step I took on the wooden floor whispered a tale as I approached the window in the living room. Outside, the night lay tranquil and still, the full moon bathing the garden in its silvery luminescence, painting the swaying trees in shades of spectral light. Not a soul stirred in the neighboring houses, all shrouded in obscurity. Yet the haunting melody persisted, seeming to emanate from every direction and none at once. I ventured through the rooms of the house, each transition altering the melody subtly. In the kitchen, it beckoned from the living room. In the living room, it beckoned from the stairs. On the stairs, it descended from the upper floor. It was a hypnotic symphony of echoes and reverberations, leading me in a silent ballet through the familiar confines of my abode. Upon reaching the bedroom upstairs, I observed the slightly ajar door, though I distinctly recalled leaving it open that morning. Moonbeams filtered through the sheer curtains, weaving intricate patterns on the floor. The music now swelled, clearer and more defined, as if I drew closer to its wellspring. Pausing at the threshold, I scrutinized the room with care. Aged and forgotten on the bedside table, my grandmother's music box gleamed in the dim light. Never had I opened it, convinced of its disrepair. Yet now in the stillness of the night, its diminutive ballerina twirled gracefully, casting a shadowy dance upon the wall. The melody it spun was identical to the one that had beckoned me, amplified as if the entirety of the house had transformed into a chamber of resonance. With measured steps, I drew nearer, feeling my heart synchronize with the music. The music box shone brighter than ever, as if radiating an inner light. As I reached out to touch its surface, I noted its warmth, almost lifelike. The ballerina continued her pirouette, her once featureless face now bearing a striking resemblance to my grandmother's, complete with that familiar, affectionate smile from my youth. For a fleeting moment, her eyes met mine, and the melody shifted, morphing into the lullaby she had sung to me as a child. I stood transfixed, enveloped in the music like a tender embrace. No fear lingered, only a profound sense of tranquility and longing. The notes swelled, filling the room until, like receding tides, they ebbed away. As the music faded to silence, the music box closed with a soft click. Silence reigned once more, but it was different, imbued with significance. Descending to my armchair below, I retrieved the fallen blanket, cocooning myself in its warmth once more. The book lay open, its words a distant echo in my mind. My thoughts lingered on the music box and my grandmother. I pondered how many melodies lay trapped within those silent gears, waiting for the opportune moment to unfurl. Since that night, on occasions when the house falls into a profound hush and the full moon casts its glow upon the garden, a sweet, familiar tune drifts through the rooms. I no longer seek its origin. Instead, I close my eyes and listen, understanding that some mysteries need not be unraveled to be embraced. Story 32. Night draped the house in its hushed embrace as the gentle wind murmured through the leaves of the ancient tree in the yard. Nestled in the armchair of my bedroom, I observed shadows waltzing on the walls in the flickering lamplight. It was the time when slumber typically beckoned, yet a peculiar resistance to Morpheus had taken hold of me. Night after night, for weeks on end, a recurring dream unfolded with eerie precision. The room's warmth and the steady cadence of the old clock's pendulum coaxed me softly. My gaze landed on the open diary resting on the desk, its pages meticulously chronicling every detail of that persistent dream. Each entry, penned neatly, recounted the same sequence: a spiral staircase of gray stone spiraling into the depths, the distant melody of water droplets, and a grand wooden door adorned with cryptic symbols. Leafing through the diary, a detail caught my eye that had eluded me before. In every iteration of the dream, the chill seemed to seep in gradually as I descended the steps. My fingers grazed the cold stone, my breath forming tiny clouds in the air. Yet what truly set this dream apart was the profound sense of déjà vu that guided me through, as if the staircase led me to a place known intimately, though unvisited in reality. The closed door at the staircase's base remained a mystery, its symbols becoming slightly clearer each night. Fluid shapes that seemed alive, shifting under my gaze. In the dream, my fingertips traced the contours of these enigmatic symbols, each touch eliciting a subtle vibration through the wood, as if the door itself breathed. That night, as I readied for bed, a peculiar item in my room caught my attention. Beside the lamp on the nightstand lay a small object I didn't recall ever seeing before, an ancient bronze key, its designs oddly reminiscent of the door's symbols in my dreams. Its weight and the cold it exuded surprised me. I couldn't recall its origin, yet its presence felt inexplicably natural, as if it belonged in my life all along. Drifting to sleep, clutching the key in my hand, a certainty settled upon me that this night would unfold differently. The dream unfurled as usual, the spiral staircase, the echoing drops, the air growing colder with each descent. But this time, upon reaching the door, the key pulsed faintly in my grasp, aligning with the carvings on the wood. Guided by an enigmatic intuition, I approached the door, discovering a hidden lock among the engravings. With a steady pulse, I inserted the key. The mechanism turned with a soft, melodic chime, akin to a forgotten ancient tune. The door creaked open, revealing not another chamber, but a mirror reflecting the staircase behind me. In the mirror's reflection, the steps ascended instead of descending. Awakening in my room, the dawn's light filtering through the curtains, the key still nestled in my palm, now radiating warmth, almost pulsating with life. On the desk, the diary lay open, a new page inscribed not in my handwriting. The characters resembled the symbols on the door, shifting shapes like waves on an ink sea. Since that night, the dream has not recurred. The key rests on my nightstand, occasionally emitting a subtle vibration on tranquil nights. I ponder what lies at the summit of that mirrored staircase, and whether one day I'll muster the courage to ascend. For now, I find solace in observing the dancing symbols in the diary, their enigmatic tale unfolding in the darkest hours of night, a narrative perhaps not yet meant for my comprehension. Story 33. Night had draped the ancient countryside dwelling in a cloak of profound serenity. Nestled in my cherished armchair beside the crackling fireplace, I observed as the shadows waltzed across the walls, the flames leisurely consuming the logs. The warmth enveloped me like a comforting shawl, while beyond, the autumn breeze tenderly rustled the tree leaves. It was amidst this perfect stillness that I detected something out of the ordinary, a crystalline, childlike giggle drifting from the upper story of the house. A laugh akin to silver bells. Pausing to listen, I let the sound intertwine with the fire's gentle pops. There was no hint of menace, rather it was a joyful, almost melodic laughter. Yet, having dwelled alone in this abode for over 2 decades, I had never entertained children. Intrigue began to trickle through me like a serene stream, gradually dispelling the drowsiness that had nearly overtaken me. With unhurried movements, I rose from the armchair, relishing the sensation as my feet met the aged Persian rug. The floorboards whispered softly as I made my way towards the staircase. The glow from the candles flickering in the living room cast a warm and inviting ambience, projecting my silhouette on the walls in a silent, graceful ballet. Ascending the stairs, I sensed the air growing cooler with each step. Not a harsh cold, but rather a gentle touch on the skin, akin to the caress of ocean breezes. The laughter echoed once more, nearer this time, emanating from the guest chamber. A room seldom used, adorned with antique furniture shrouded in white sheets that swayed gently, stirred by an unseen draft. The door stood slightly ajar, through which filtered a silvery light, unlike any other illumination in the house. Not moonlight too warm for that, nor electric lamps. It was a unique radiance, pulsating softly, akin to a tranquil heartbeat. Upon nudging the door open, the ancient wood hummed a familiar tune. The room unfolded before me, bathed in that peculiar luminescence. The draped furniture formed gentle, reassuring contours, resembling clouds in a clear sky. And there, perched on the windowsill, I beheld something that seized my breath, not a distinct form, but a play of light and shadow that seemed to mimic a child. The laughter chimed once more, distinctly originating from that radiant presence. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of awe. The light child appeared to toy with the beams it emitted, crafting luminous patterns on the walls as if painting with light itself. I advanced slowly, and with each step, the room's temperature oscillated tenderly between cool and warm, like waves caressing the shore. Drawing nearer, I discerned a familiar quality in the figure. In its fluid motions, I recognized echoes of the gestures I once made as a child whilst playing alone in my room. The realization washed over me with the sweetness of a forgotten memory. That laugh, so pure and crystalline, belonged to my childhood. Time seemed to stretch as I observed that surreal spectacle. The light child continued its wordless play, occasionally punctuated by that melodious laugh, now reverberating like an echo from yesteryears. I refrained from speaking or engaging, fearing to shatter the spell of tranquility and nostalgia. Gradually, the silvery glow began to wane, akin to the sun setting on a wintry evening. The child's form grew increasingly ethereal until naught remained save a faint gleam. The final laugh I heard was but a whisper, a tender farewell before dissipating into darkness entirely. I lingered in the room for what felt like an eternity, enveloped in a serene hush. The swaying sheets on the furniture stilled, and the air reverted to its usual temperature. Yet something had shifted. The guest chamber, once a repository for dusty memories, now seemed to harbor a precious enigma. Retreating to my armchair by the hearth, where the fire smoldered gently, I settled amidst the cushions, cognizant that the events of that night would forever elude certainty. Was it a dream, a recollection, or perchance something deeper, a message from the past garbed in a child's laughter amidst the darkness? Since that night, whenever I passed by the guest room, I paused to listen. Occasionally on the stillest nights, I catch a faint echo of that crystalline laughter, akin to a tender lullaby guiding me towards slumber. And with a smile, I allow the mystery to endure, a sweet secret shared between myself and the child who laughs in the shadows. Story 34. The doorbell stayed silent on that autumn afternoon. A gentle knock echoed through the house, barely audible, like the whisper of a moth's wings brushing against a window pane. I sat on the couch, cocooned in a cozy blanket, engrossed in a book, while the rain outside played a soothing melody on the glass. Rising slowly, I assumed it was just the wind toying with something outside. But as I opened the door, there was no one in sight, just a neatly squared, unmarked brown package resting on the doorstep. My name, elegantly handwritten in ancient script, was the sole adornment on the mysterious parcel. The cardboard felt smooth and dry despite the rain, its weight surprisingly light as I carried it inside. The silence deepened, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the antique clock in the hallway and the soft patter of rain persisting outside. Seated back on the couch, I studied the package intently, searching for clues. There were no signs of tape or seams, the edges flawlessly folded as if by a master of origami. A faint fragrance wafted from within, a blend of aged books, black tea, and a hint of sandalwood, evoking a sense of nostalgia. Holding it in my lap, I sensed a subtle movement inside, as if the very air within danced in delicate rhythms. The dwindling daylight cast elongated shadows in the room, the natural twilight enveloping everything in a gentle embrace. The package seemed to absorb the fading light in a peculiar manner, its surface playing with reflections in a mesmerizing way. As minutes slipped by, I felt compelled to uncover its secrets. My fingers traced the edges, discovering sporadic warm spots, as if the package held a hidden internal heat that shifted mysteriously. A distant memory stirred, reminiscent of a similar package from my childhood, discovered in my grandparents' home. The rain outside intensified, creating a more present yet calming backdrop, its droplets tracing paths on the windows mirroring the warmth I felt on the package. Could there be a connection? Or was it merely my mind weaving patterns out of thin air? Lost in contemplation, the room's temperature subtly shifted to a perfect equilibrium, neither too hot nor too cold. The familiar scent grew stronger, mingling with the fresh rain scent seeping through the cracked window. A remarkable sight caught my eye. Luminous impressions appeared where my fingers touched the cardboard, fading like fleeting stars in the night sky. Mesmerized, I watched this enchanting display, losing track of time until I lifted my gaze to find the room cloaked in twilight. The package emitted a faint glow, barely visible in the dimness, a beacon of intrigue. Deciding to leave the mystery untouched for the night, I set the package on the coffee table and illuminated the room with a lamp. In the artificial light, it appeared ordinary once more, a simple cube with my name etched on its surface. Days passed, the package a silent enigma occupying the coffee table. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of that elusive glow in the twilight, or sensed the subtle movements within, like a whispered secret. The scent shifted subtly, a familiar yet unplaceable essence that evolved with each passing hour. The origin of the package remained a puzzle, its contents a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Perhaps the true magic lay not in what it held, but in the wonder it inspired, a perfect enigma, beckoning for contemplation rather than resolution. Even now, as rain taps against the windows on autumn evenings, my thoughts drift to that enigmatic package and its silent allure. I ponder if somewhere out there another soul gazes upon a similar parcel, bearing their name in that elegant calligraphy, pondering the same choice, to unlock its secrets or let the mystery dance on undisturbed. Story 35, the dim glow of the candle flickered gently, casting intricate shadows that danced along the ancient stone walls as I descended into the depths of the cellar. Each step I took echoed through the wooden staircase, a familiar melody that had become a part of my routine during my daily visits to retrieve Grandma's cherished preserves. The air was thick with a cool, musty dampness, carrying with it the nostalgic fragrance of earth and weathered wood that transported me back to the days of my youth. On this particular evening, however, a subtle shift in the atmosphere gave me pause. It could have been the way the flame of the candle swayed, unaffected by any breeze, or perhaps it was the thin veil of dust that coated every surface, even though I had been there only the day before. The shadows seemed to elongate, stretching towards the darkness that lurked at the bottom of the stairs, beckoning me further into the unknown. Halting midway down the staircase, a peculiar sensation washed over me. The wooden shelves that typically ended within a short distance now appeared to extend beyond their usual boundaries, disappearing into the obscurity of the corridor. The feeble light of the candle failed to illuminate the farthest reaches, giving the illusion that the passageway was expanding before my very eyes. A hushed silence enveloped me, broken solely by the rhythmic beat of my own heart and the distant murmur of water trickling through the ancient stones. Driven by a curiosity that overshadowed my apprehension, I pressed onward. The jars of preserves lined the shelves, their glass surfaces faintly glimmering in the wavering light. Yet instead of the familiar labels I had come to know, I noticed that some bore dates of a bygone era: 1980, 1960, 1940. And some so weathered that their inscriptions had become illegible. With each step forward, the air grew colder, carrying the scent of damp earth mingled with a long-forgotten aroma akin to ancient manuscripts. The shelves continued to extend into the depths, revealing walls no longer rough-hewn stone, but intricately laid bricks adorned with cryptic symbols, their craftsmanship defying the era in which the cellar had been constructed. Pausing before a particular shelf, my gaze fixated on a singular jar that stood out from the rest. Crafted from an opaque, light-absorbing glass, it exuded an air of antiquity. The label, surprisingly well preserved despite its age, bore a date that defied reason: 1820. As I reached for it, a barely perceptible sound drifted through the cellar, akin to a whisper devoid of words but resonating with the passage of time itself. Turning slowly, I caught a fleeting glimpse of indistinct figures moving in the shadows, like wisps of memories attempting to materialize. Sensing it was time to retreat, I pivoted towards the stairs, only to find the distance I had traversed inexplicably multiplied. The light at the summit now appeared as a distant speck, akin to a lone star in the vast expanse of a moonless night. With measured steps I ascended, willing myself to remain composed, counting each footfall as if I were a child again. As I climbed, the shelves began to transform once more, reverting to the familiar arrangement I had always known. The dates on the jars shifted to more recent years, and the walls reclaimed their original rough texture. Upon reaching the kitchen, bathed in the warm embrace of its light, I placed the mysterious jar atop the first step. Glancing back into the darkness of the cellar, a fleeting movement caught my eye, hinting at a distortion in the fabric of time itself. That night, seated at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of tea cradled in my hands, I pondered the events that had transpired. The jar now bore a simple label that read Blackberry Jam 2023. Yet, when I uncorked it, a fragrance unlike any other wafted forth, a scent redolent of time itself, sweet and ancient, evoking memories of bygone days. Since then, each descent into the cellar has left me with a lingering sense of anticipation, as if the subterranean chamber holds untold temporal mysteries waiting to be unveiled. Though the stairs remain unchanged and the shelves stocked with their usual preserves, there are moments when the dim light and profound silence hint at the cellar's hidden depths, as if it awaits my return to reveal more of its enigmatic secrets. And perhaps one day I will summon the courage to traverse that seemingly infinite corridor to its terminus, to uncover the enigma that lies where time loses its grasp on reality.